Chapter 3803. Yishiwen did not show any mercy in the face of three-eyed divinity's counterattack. He summoned his martial supreme seal and slammed it down. The martial supreme seal had already become a half-step sovereign Tao tool under the blessing of the golden light of merit. Its power was comparable to the sword of destiny. Because it was his life Tao tool, it was more compatible with his Tao. Yishiwen's Tao was the 3,000 martial Taos. Many other techniques and martial arts were evolved from the 3,000 martial Taos. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist used to be the demon monarch's martial art. Now, it had been incorporated into Yishiwen's 3,000 martial Taos. Among Yishiwen's 3,000 martial Taos, there was the law of fist. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist was one of the countless fist techniques of fist Tao. Yishiwen had gotten used to it. Moreover, unless it was a heaven-defying technique like the universe creation palm, there wasn't much of a difference to him. He had already mastered the 3,000 martial Taos. Any martial art was just a carrier of his 3,000 martial Taos. This was a sign that the cultivation of the Great Path had reached an essential level. It was terrifying. Boom! Yishiwen's martial supreme seal slammed down. The terrifying power suppressed three-eyed divinity's resistance. Boom! 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 Three-eyed God roared unceasingly. He burned his own life force in an attempt to break free from Yishiwen's suppression. However, it was useless. Every time he counterattacked, Yishiwen would suppress him. He gradually discovered that the area he could move in was getting smaller and smaller. The 3,000 martial arts had turned into countless streaks of light, which directly limited the area he could move in. It was getting smaller and smaller. But there was no other way. He realized how terrifying Yishiwen was. Yishiwen had cultivated for 10,000 years. He wasn't like 10,000 years ago. Back then, he had to use all his strength to fight against a half-step sovereign. He even had to use a method that would injure both sides to kill his opponent. But now, with just a wave of his hand, he was able to trap a half-step sovereign realm expert, crushing all of his resistance. What kind of ferocious ability was this? Although three-eyed divinity wasn't at his peak, he was stronger than heavenless demon monarch and the others. Yishiwen's terror was obvious, truly unfathomable. The three-eyed god realized that Yishiwen would exhaust him to death if this continued. Moreover, he wouldn't be able to pose any threat to Yishiwen. I'll fight it out with you. Even if I die, even if my era falls, you'll be buried with me. Venerable three-eyed god roared, and the divine radiance on his body skyrocketed by more than 10 times. He burned his life to the extreme and turned into a mass of terrifying divine radiance. Then he crashed into the barrier cage formed by Yishiwen's 3,000 martial principles. Originally, his attack could only shake the barrier cage at most. It was impossible to break this barrier cage. It was even more impossible to hurt Yishiwen, who was standing outside the barrier cage. However, this attack was too terrifying. It was like an attack that could create the world. It destroyed everything. The world shook violently. The primal chaos was drowned by this endless divine light. At this time, the armies and experts of the 2 eras who were fighting were stunned. Yishiwen and three-eyed deity had regarded the desolate edge of the universe as the place to fight. However, this didn't prevent them from feeling the suffocating aura. It was simply too shocking. Is this a fight between half-step sovereigns? Among the many Empyreans, only the Western Empyrean felt it the most. She had been seriously injured and missed the world-destroying battle. She could only feel the monstrous aura in her seclusion area, as well as the world-shaking battles. However, how could that kind of indirect feeling compare to experiencing it personally? It also made her feel the huge gap between her and Yishiwen. Old ancestor. Many creatures of this era were in grief as they watched venerable three-eyed burn his entire life force to break through the barrier cage that Yishiwen had set up. Venerable three-eyed rushed in front of Yishiwen. His aura was also burning to the extreme. It was terrifying to the extreme. He burned his life to attack in exchange for the opportunity to come in front of Yishiwen. Yi Shiwen could see the sorrow on his face. It was the same as when he had tried his best to kill Granny Ghost, Heavenless Demon Monarch, and violent evil corpse Venerable. He had also tried his best. However, miracles couldn't be created every time. Venerable Three-Eyed rushed in front of Yi Shiwen with a sinister smile on his face. He had exhausted everything in order to exchange for this opportunity. The third eye on the top of his head suddenly opened, and an earth-shattering energy erupted from it. It seemed as if it had transformed into a torrent that could penetrate the heavens and the earth. It swept towards Yi Shiwen and submerged him. Ha ha! Even if I die, you will die with me. Venerable Three-Eyed laughed loudly. This was his trump card. Although his life force was exhausted and he couldn't launch another wave of attacks, this terrifying attack hidden in the third eye was his final trump card. This eye had been accumulating energy since a few years ago. Every time he cultivated, a portion of his energy would be absorbed by the third eye. Moreover, he hadn't opened his eye even once in the last few eras, so it was obvious how shocking and terrifying the energy contained within his third eye was. It had the power to destroy the world. He believed that even a sovereign would die if he took this attack unguarded. However, he heard a cold voice before he could finish laughing. Is this your trump card? No wonder you burned your life force to rush in front of me. It's quite powerful. If it was an ordinary person, they would have fallen into your trap. However, it's a pity that your tricks are laughable in front of me. Suddenly, a big hand grabbed out of the void and pinched the terrifying flood into nothingness. The energy that could destroy the world didn't pose any threat to Yi Shiwen in the end. Yi Shiwen's figure walked out of the chaos. The attack just now didn't pose any threat to him. Impossible. This is impossible. Venerable Three-Eyed's eyes widened. He had used all his strength to attack, but it failed just like that. He thought that he could succeed. However, there weren't many miracles in this world. If everyone could create miracles, then miracles wouldn't be called miracles. He recalled that he was also a person who was good at creating miracles in the past. The old world will eventually fall. Let the past return to the past. Yi Shiwen sighed softly. The sword of fate appeared in his hand. He waved it gently, and Venerable Three-Eyed's head flew into the air. His spirit was killed along with it. Venerable Three-Eyed had fallen. Then Yi Shiwen grabbed the corpse of Three-Eyed God and poured the water into the world tree. It seemed as if the world tree had obtained a great tonic. It was unknown how much taller its body had grown, even though it was already tens of thousands of feet tall. Even though he had yet to transcend the half-step sovereign realm, he was still a half-step sovereign realm expert. Just this half-step sovereign realm expert was already much stronger than ordinary experts. Even though Hierarch Three-Eyed's blood energy had deteriorated and was no longer at its peak, that was only relative to himself. In reality, his blood energy was still as vast as the ocean. With the fall of Venerable Three-Eyed, this epic could no longer resist the martial epic's army. This was a one-sided massacre. Without the protection of half-step sovereigns, and with the heavenly Tao sealed, it was simply a path to death for them. Even if they fought to the death, even if they were prepared to die, even if they fought with the determination to die, in reality, it was still meaningless, just like in the martial epic. If Yi Shiwen hadn't killed those half-step sovereigns, the martial epic's resistance would have been pointless. Countless martial epic's armies swept out like a raging tide, destroying one world after another. Mountains, rivers, seas, basins, plateaus, the sky, the universe, stars, everything was within the scope of destruction. As more and more of this epic was destroyed, the epic's heavenly Tao grew weaker. This was because the heavenly Tao of any epic was the sum of that epic's strength. If this epic's strength was weakened, it meant that the epic was weakened as well. Yi Shiwen didn't interfere again. Instead, he stood at the side and presided over the sealing of this epic's heavenly Tao. Countless martial epics' elite experts plundered to their heart's content. Boundless wealth and resources all fell into their hands. Half of them were to be handed over to Yi Shiwen, which was to be handed over to the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Yishuan allowed them to keep the rest. This stimulated the morale of the martial epic's elite army. Seeing that it was time, Yishuan waved his hand, and 10 heavenly venerates stepped forward. Then, they formed a large formation and chanted, infusing all their magic power into this formation. Immediately, an incredibly horrifying will crossed the primal chaos and descended upon this epic. This will was none other than the martial epic's heavenly Tao's will. Now that this epic's heavenly Tao was weakened to its limit, it was time to draw down the martial epic's heavenly Tao's will. This epic's heavenly Tao's heavenly Tao was truly weakened to its limit. Now that the martial epic's heavenly Tao's heavenly Tao descended, it instantly scattered. The remaining remnant couldn't stop the martial epic's heavenly Tao's will from devouring it. After 10 days and 10 nights, this epic's heavenly Tao's was finally devoured by the martial epic's heavenly Tao's will. An epic fell. Chapter 38:04. With the fall of this epic's heavenly Tao, it was only a matter of time before this epic fell. Without the protection of the heavenly Tao, this epic looked like it was going to collapse. It was like the end of the epic had arrived. The martial epic's army swept in to bury the last glory of this epic. Countless natural treasures hidden by the heavenly Tao also appeared after the collapse. Everyone in the martial epic's army gained a lot of benefits. Their morale soared even higher. After the destruction of this epic, the martial epic's army did not stop. Instead, they moved on to the next epic. The martial epic's horrifying accumulations and strength were vividly displayed at this moment. Although they only mobilized less than 1/3 of their strength, it was still a disaster for those ancient epics. An epic fell just like that. It could be said that the three-eyed divine venerate was killed by Yi Shiwen without being able to retaliate at all. This battle shocked the entire primal chaos. In reality, there had always been people following behind the martial epic's army. They were all spies sent by the various epics. Of course, under such circumstances, ordinary people were not qualified to be spies unless they had already advanced to heavenly venerate. Otherwise, they would not even be able to follow from afar. The result of this battle spread to the various great epics at the fastest speed, which shocked them. Although they knew that the martial epic was far stronger than the ancient epic, the speed at which the ancient epic was destroyed still shocked them. Most importantly, it made them feel fear. It even reminded them of the fear of being dominated by the fortune creation Heavenly Lord. That was an unparalleled period of darkness. Under the leadership of the fortune creation Heavenly Lord, the fortune creation divine dynasty had reached an unimaginable level. Those who were born later might not be able to imagine how strong the fortune creation Heavenly Lord was at that time. The ancient epic was eradicated without any resistance. They could only tremble before the divine might of the fortune creation divine dynasty. At that time, the fortune creation divine dynasties might reach its peak. The fortune creation Heavenly Lord even suppressed a ruler expert. That was a truly world-shaking battle. Now, the martial epic alliance army led by Yi Shiwen was only lacking a ruler-level expert compared to the force that made the entire primal chaos tremble in the past. Although there was only a slight difference, it could be a world of difference. Even so, the current martial epic army was already very horrifying. After destroying an epic, Yi Shiwen and the martial epic's army did not stop. Their anger had not been vented yet. Just the destruction of an epic was not enough to make them stop. Soon, all the great epics received more information. In the second era, the heavenly Tao didn't even last for a month before it completely fell. The heavens fell and the earth cracked. The heavenly Tao of this era fell, and a half-step sovereign appeared in this era. However, he wasn't as strong as the three-eyed deity and was killed by Yi Shiwen. The third era also fell. The epic collapsed, and the heavenly Tao was swallowed by the martial epic's heavenly Tao. It only took 3 days for this era to weaken to the extreme. They didn't even have a half-step sovereign anymore. They were only slightly stronger than the seventh gold epoch that Yi Shiwen had destroyed. 3 consecutive epochs were destroyed, but the martial epoch showed no signs of stopping. This made the people of the other epochs anxious. The idea of sacrificing some of the ancient epochs to preserve the majority of the ancient epochs began to waver. It seemed like Yi Shiwen showed no signs of stopping. After setting off a huge uproar, the undercurrents quickly began to surge. Within the endless primal chaos, an army was traversing through the primal chaos. Around this army, countless runes flickered with light, protecting this army from being harmed by the primal chaos. Some of the creatures living in the primal chaos didn't even dare to approach. This army was truly terrifying. In the middle of the army, in front of a flight of stairs, Yi Shiwen stood upright like a spear, as if he was soaring into the sky. Beside him, Western Tianzuan, Heaven City's city lord, and the others stood on this flight of stairs. Eastern Tianzuan, are you confident in this battle? Western Tianzuan asked Yi Shiwen's figure in front of him. I've been preparing for a long time. Moreover, it's not like we don't have any trump cards. Now that I've destroyed 3 ancient epochs, they should have made up their minds. It's normal for the weak to unite. Yi Shiwen said faintly. His eyes gazed into the distance, as if he could see through the entire primal chaos. When the other Tianzuan heard Yi Shiwen say this, they immediately relaxed a little. They were also peak figures, and ordinary things wouldn't be able to move them. However, this was different. According to their estimates, Yi Shiwen had destroyed 3 ancient epochs, and there were no signs of stopping. The remaining ancient epochs would probably unite. Although the martial epoch was terrifying, if they killed Yi Shiwen, who was their leader, the rest would undoubtedly be much simpler. After all, Yi Shiwen, who could casually kill half-step sovereigns, was their biggest threat. Therefore, when the time came, Yi Shiwen would likely have to face several half-step sovereigns working together. Any one of those half-step sovereigns would be a huge threat to them, let alone several of them. If Yi Shiwen failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Since you are confident, then we can rest assured, Heaven City's city lord said. Although he had competed with Yi Shiwen before, he could no longer catch up to Yi Shiwen now. Yi Shiwen's strength was already unfathomable. He could only lower his head and walk this path. Yes, this time, at least try to destroy a few more ancient epochs. For our martial epoch, the existence of these ancient epochs is a malignant tumor. They are hidden dangers. Normally, they don't seem to be much, and they don't dare to make any moves. However, once something big happens, such as the situation with Half Moon Immortal Lord, they will completely erupt. It's too dangerous. The more we eliminate, the safer the martial epoch will be. Yi Shiwen's eyes became increasingly sharp as he said this. Yes, all the heavenly venerables nodded. The battle 10,000 years ago made them understand how much damage the ancient epochs could cause. It was simply unimaginable. You just need to act according to the plan. I will destroy them in this battle. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. His tone was full of confidence. Martial Saint, you really dare to come and die. An extremely cold voice came from the primal chaos. The boundless might that accompanied the voice stirred the martial epoch's allied armies. That rumbling voice boomed in everyone's hearts, shaking the entire primal chaos like a huge wave, shaking everyone's hearts. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. He waved his hand, and countless martial talismans flew up and formed a huge barrier, protecting the martial epoch's army within it. They would not be affected. Why wouldn't I dare to come? Yi Shiwen looked into the distance and saw a huge beast in the primal chaos. This beast was hundreds of millions of meters long, like a huge star standing in the primal chaos. Its entire body gave off a 5-colored light. It was like the true god of the primal chaos. One movement from it could suppress the entire primal chaos. The shocking thing was that this huge beast had 9 heads. 9 represented the extreme number of heaven and earth. It also represented a kind of great Tao. This was actually a half-step ruler. It had 9 heads on its neck. It looked like it had reached its limit. However, if it grew 10 heads one day, it would mean that it had broken through to the ruler realm. 9 was the extreme number of heaven and earth, but 10 was a perfect number. It represented another kind of realm. Even so, this ferocious beast was already extremely horrifying. It could deter the entire martial epic's army by itself. They did not dare to approach it. You want to kill me alone? Yi Shiwen's gaze was cold. He looked at this 9-headed ferocious beast as if he did not care about it all. That 9-headed ferocious beast had a cold expression. A cold, murderous intent appeared on its 9 heads. No one had ever dared to speak to it so arrogantly. What if you count me in? Suddenly, as soon as he finished speaking, another figure appeared. It was a robust man in golden armor. His entire body was emitting a crimson glow. Upon closer inspection, it was not a crimson glow, but a bloody aura. The air was filled with the smell of blood. It was unknown how many creatures had been killed to be able to fill the air with such a bloody aura. Perhaps it had crossed epochs after epoch, reaching a point that made people tremble in fear. This man in golden armor held a long spear in his hand. The tip of the spear directly suppressed the primal chaos. It looked extremely horrifying. He was a terrifying existence that brought eternal death. Around him, there seemed to be an incomparably huge battlefield. On the battlefield, countless corpses formed a path to the highest point. Countless white bones and corpses were scattered all over the place. It was a terrifying sight to behold, and he stood in the middle of the battlefield. It seemed like he could turn the entire primal chaos into a battlefield like that. Another one? Yi Shiwen said with a slight smile. But unfortunately, it's not enough. It's still not enough. Yi Shiwen shouted. The entire primal chaos trembled under his shout. Countless people were shocked, especially the celestial venerable scouts from the various epochs. They were extremely shocked. 2 half-step rulers were actually not enough, in Yi Shiwen's words. It was still not enough. Chapter 38:05. To these heavenly venerate spies, they felt that Yi Shiwen was crazy. Any half-step ruler was unimaginably strong, not to mention 2 of them. Even if Yi Shiwen was very strong, he wouldn't dare to say that he could defeat 2 of them, not to mention that he wasn't strong enough. I think you've really lost your mind, the man in golden armor said coldly as he looked at Yi Shiwen. Since you want to fight, then let's fight to our heart's content. Do you want to watch from the sidelines? If you want to kill me, then come down. Yi Shiwen flew out of the martial epic's army and into the primal chaos. His figure flashed, and he appeared in the depths of the primal chaos. His eyes scanned the entire primal chaos. Clearly, he was thinking of something. The martial epic's army also started to get restless. Half-step rulers appeared one after another. Now, according to Yi Shiwen, there were actually more than 2 of them. I didn't expect you to be able to sense my presence. However, this can't change the fact that you will die today. Suddenly, another figure appeared. This person looked like an ordinary farmer. He wore coarse hemp clothes. If one didn't look carefully, one would think that he had just come out from a farm. Where did you come from? Yi Shiwen said with a smirk. Martial Saint, you've killed too much. Do you know that going too far is as bad as not going far enough? You've already destroyed 3 epochs. Isn't that enough? The old farmer sighed and said, If you back off now, I can make the decision to let you go. You don't have to die. Ha ha ha, too much killing? Yi Shiwen laughed loudly as if he had heard the funniest joke. When you ancient epochs attacked my martial epoch, did you step forward to stop them? Now you're telling me that you've killed too much? Don't you think it's ridiculous? The old farmer only sighed and said, Stubborn. It looks like it's heaven's will that you die here today. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and said, You want to kill me? It's not enough to rely on words. Let's see how capable you are. Indeed, your words are very good, but what's the use? You will die today. We are not those half-step rulers who are no longer at their peak. A sigh resounded. An ancient war chariot came from the depths of the primal chaos, as if it had crossed the river of time and arrived at the other end of time. A figure was sitting upright on this ancient chariot. It was a jade-like person who was only half as tall as Yi Shiwen. His entire body was made of jade, and he was emitting a kind of fine light that suppressed the entire chaos. Even though he wasn't tall, who would dare to look down on him? They only felt that he was incomparably terrifying and powerful. Wu Zun, as an Empyrean, you can actually kill half-step sovereigns. You are indeed powerful, but bullying those old half-step sovereigns is not right. You will grow old in the future. Aren't you afraid of retribution? At this moment, the gigantic beast spoke. His voice rumbled, causing the entire primal chaos to tremble violently. Aren't you afraid that someone will use their youth and vigor to bully you in your old age? Yi Shiwen smiled coldly and said, Am I the one who forced them to attack the martial epic? Besides, I don't believe in the future. I only believe in the present. 10,000 years is too long. I will seize every moment. Cut the crap. Tell me your names. I don't kill nameless people. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. Nine-headed holy venerate. The nine-headed beast said. Supreme war venerate. The man in golden armor said in a low voice. Me? I haven't mentioned my name in a long time. I think it's Imperial Killer. It doesn't matter. Isn't a name just a code? What can I do? The old man, dressed like an old farmer, slowly opened his mouth. He looked like an old farmer, but his honorific title was full of killing intent. There were only wrong names, but there was no wrong honorific title. Remember, the one who killed you is Jade Monarch. The small figure on the ancient war chariot shouted, causing the entire primal chaos to tremble. His entire body flickered with endless green light. Behind him, his black hair flowed like a river of stars. Then, the ancient war chariot under him suddenly moved and turned into a torrent, cutting through the entire primal chaos in an instant and blasting towards Yi Shiwen. The ancient war chariot under him was a half-step dominator Dao tool. He had integrated his entire being into this ancient war chariot. From the beginning of the epic to the end, he was unstoppable and unstoppable. This incomparably terrifying blow swept directly towards Yi Shiwen, intending to kill him in an instant. I haven't seen Jade Monarch's Jade War Chariot for too many years. It's even more powerful than before. At this moment, the Imperial Killer's expression became even more serious. He could also feel how terrifying Jade Monarch's Jade War Chariot was. If a world was hit by it, it would probably collapse on the spot. The boundless jade-like color drowned everything in its path. Facing such a terrifying attack, Yi Shiwen's body seemed to be frozen in the primal chaos, not moving an inch. Boom! This jade chariot directly collided with Yi Shiwen's body. However, Yi Shiwen stretched out his big hand and firmly blocked this jade chariot that was directly bombarding towards him. Waves of golden aura burst out from Yi Shiwen's body. Every molecule of this aura was evolving the martial Dao laws, and there was a shocking great technique brewing within it. Jade Monarch, who was sitting in the war chariot, could not help but be slightly shocked when he saw that Yi Shiwen was able to block his Jade War Chariot with his bare hands. Once his Jade War Chariot charged forward, even a half-step dominator who was extremely proficient in body cultivation would not dare to block it with bare hands. Without a doubt, it was suicide. However, not only did Yi Shiwen accept it, but he also accepted it directly without any hesitation. Thousands of runes flew out. Yi Shiwen's martial Dao laws collided with Jade Monarch's jade-colored laws. It was like a terrifying tide sweeping out, colliding with each other and obliterating each other. Then, it was quickly extinguished and submerged into the primal chaos. In the primal chaos, there was no concept of up, down, left, or right. But now, the two of them had killed their way out. Do you think it's over just like that? Jade Monarch sneered. His smile was a bit ferocious. He was different from those half-step dominators who were no longer at their peak. There was nothing to be afraid of when he attacked. Boom! His Jade War Chariot suddenly turned into an endless hell. It directly swallowed Yi Shiwen, turning it into an endless hell. This Jade War Chariot had another name, which was Hell War Chariot. It was like a realm of hell, and it could destroy any enemy. Countless evil spirits crawled out of this terrifying hell, crawling directly towards Yi Shiwen, wanting to devour him completely. Yi Shiwen sneered. Jade Monarch in front of him clearly cultivated two Dao laws. But the two Tao laws were completely integrated, and their power was greatly increased. This was already very terrifying for ordinary people. But in front of Jade Monarch, it was simply showing off in front of an expert. Yishuan's strength did not only integrate two Tao laws, but also directly integrated 3,000 martial Tao laws. This kind of method was not worth mentioning in front of Jade Monarch. Expiate person scripture. Yishuan shouted loudly, and the sound of endless chanting of the Heart Sutra reverberated throughout the void. It was the soul-cleansing scripture. Endless golden rays of light were released, purifying those malicious ghosts. Those evil spirits were all souls that Jade Monarch had slaughtered in the past. After these souls died, they were still enslaved by Jade Monarch. But now, they were directly expiated by Yishuan in an instant. You still want to kill me with this kind of method? Yishuan sneered. This is just the beginning. Jade Monarch sneered. His body directly turned into a green light, blasting towards Yishuan. In an instant, thousands of attacks were unleashed, and Yishuan was submerged in them. Boom, boom, boom. Countless attacks fell directly on Yishuan's body. Each attack was incomparably heavy. The Good Fortune Treasure Robe appeared on Yishuan's body. However, each of Jade Monarch's attacks could penetrate the Good Fortune Treasure Robe. This was incomparable to the Good Fortune Treasure Robe that Heavenless Demon Monarch and the others had risked their lives to penetrate. A true peak half-step ruler and an old half-step ruler were not the same concept at all. Jade Monarch's strength is getting stronger and stronger. In the future, there may be a chance to fight for the opportunity to achieve Tao. One of the 9 heads of the 9-headed holy sage said. Looking at the 9 heads from afar, it was a great deterrent. The other 2 were also moved when they saw this scene. Unlike the old half-step rulers, they still had a chance to go one step further. Although the chances were slim, it was not impossible, so they paid extra attention. Suddenly, rays of golden light directly tore through the green torrent. Then, they heard Yishuan's cold shout. You still want to kill me with this level of strength? Aren't you being too ridiculous? As soon as the words left his mouth, the 3 half-step sovereigns felt a terrifying energy surge out from within. This energy grew stronger and stronger, becoming more and more terrifying. Very quickly, it gathered into a torrent that tore the green light barrier apart. Then, an incomparably huge seal appeared from within. Martial Supreme Seal. A huge seal descended from the sky and directly blasted into the blue light curtain, directly hitting a person and sending him flying. Chapter 38:06. That person was none other than the Jade Monarch. The Jade Monarch's attack was too weak for Yishuan. It couldn't hurt Yishuan at all. The Jade Monarch was sent flying with a single punch. Yishuan was too strong. He was extremely strong. No one knew how many benefits he had obtained from the martial epic's heavenly way after he had saved the martial epic. Perhaps only he knew. This was the benefit of the current era. Suddenly, an incomparably huge beast claw descended from the void at this moment. It was going to trample Yishuan to death. It was an incomparably terrifying aura. The 9-headed Holy Venerable made his move at this crucial moment. Boom! This attack directly fell on Yishuan's body, and a terrifying chaotic frenzy erupted, drowning everything. Eastern Heavenly Venerable. Many people from the martial epic exclaimed. This attack was too accurate. The moment Yishuan made his move, the 9-headed Holy Venerable had already used up all his strength. This attack was going to disrupt Yishuan's rhythm and severely injure him. Moreover, this kind of fighting technique was too humiliating. It was going to trample on Yishuan's head. However, just as everyone was exclaiming in surprise, they saw an earth-shattering sword light sweep across the entire chaos. The entire chaos was cut open and the entire beast claw was pierced in an instant. Bang! The beast claw turned into a bloody mist in an instant. It was obvious that the 9-headed Holy Venerable was at a disadvantage in such a collision. Yishuan's sword slashed his front claw into pieces. Yishuan was still as strong, and unparalleled as before. He wasn't going to shed blood in the chaos like many people thought. Yishuin held the sword of destiny in his hand. His eyes and expression were even colder. You want to sneak attack me? If even you can't stop me, how am I going to pacify those ancient eras? You're too arrogant. It's already a miracle that you've reached this stage as a heavenly venerable. How dare you be so arrogant now? At that moment, the Imperial War Venerate was like a peerless war god that had awakened. His terrifying aura spread throughout the entire primal chaos. In that 1,000th of a second, a long spear instantly arrived in front of Yishuin. This attack directly smashed the chaos. Even time was smashed. It turned into crystals all over the sky. It was terrifying to the extreme. Yishuin wasn't afraid in the slightest. His hand transformed into a revered martial seal and went up to meet the attack. A long spear directly pierced through everything, but it couldn't reach Yishuin. Yishuin's 3,000 martial arts principles turned into a huge cage, locking down all the attacks coming towards Yishuin. Young man, don't be so murderous. At this time, Yishuin heard the sigh of the Imperial Killer. His voice hadn't even faded when the Imperial Killer suddenly appeared in front of Yishuin. His attack had transcended time, space, and all boundaries. It was able to directly penetrate through the barrier cage formed by Yishuin's 3,000 martial arts techniques. Yishuin didn't know when the Imperial Killer had arrived before him. His attacks were truly terrifying. Bang! The Imperial Killer's peerless attack landed 3 inches in front of Yishuin, unable to advance any further. At this time, the good fortune robe appeared on Yishuin's body. After that battle, Yishuin's strength had increased tremendously. In fact, there were very few people who could force him to use the good fortune robe. What? The Imperial Killer's eyes flashed with a bit of astonishment. It seemed that he didn't expect Yishuin to be so strong. He didn't hold back in this peerless attack, but couldn't break through the robe on Yishuin's body. This is the good fortune robe, the Tao tool that the fortune heavenly monarch carried with him. At this time, the Imperial Killer finally understood why Yishuin dared to fight against 4 people. He had one trump card after another, and there was no time for him to use them all. The defensive power of the good fortune robe alone was unimaginable. Back then, Yishuin's cultivation was far from his current level, and he couldn't display much of the good fortune robe's power. However, with the defensive power of the good fortune robe alone, Yishuin could fight against half-step sovereigns, let alone now. It's a little too late to realize it now. Yishuin sneered, and at this time, he directly slapped out with his big hand. Universe Creation Palm. When Yishuin's palm fell, it was as if the entire universe had been rotated and absorbed into his palm. Then it turned into a thunderous attack, directly falling down. Boom! The entire primordial chaos was blown apart. This attack shook both ancient and modern times. Even in the battles between half-step sovereigns, there was rarely such a terrifying attack. As the universe creation palm fell, the entire river of time actually appeared in the primordial chaos. Not good. When the Imperial Killer saw this scene, he couldn't help but turn pale with fright. He retreated again and again, but soon discovered that no matter how he retreated, it was of no use at all. The universe creation palm directly sealed all the space, sealing all the primordial chaos. He could even only watch as the universe creation palm fell directly. In his eyes, the speed at which the cosmic creation palm was falling was extremely slow. It could be said that he could only see the cosmic creation palm falling bit by bit. But in the eyes of others, it was simply extremely fast. In an instant, it had fallen. This was not an illusion. It was the truth. Because the universe creation palm directly separated the entire primordial chaos into 2 parts. Time still flowed at a normal speed outside, but inside the universe creation palm, the flow of time had been slowed down. The universe creation palm could not only seal space, but it could also isolate time. It was a supreme creation technique. Bang! The Imperial Killer was directly hit, and a loud explosion sounded. The Imperial Killer was directly hit, and in an instant, the Imperial Killer was directly hit and then directly exploded on the spot. Yi Shiwen's universe creation palm was simply too frightening. The Imperial Killer's body reformed in the distance, but his face was a lot paler. It was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries in the previous attack. He no longer looked like an old farmer from before. On the contrary, his entire body began to straighten, and a crazy killing intent was released from his body. He used the killing path to prove his Tao, and along the way, it was unknown how many living beings he had killed, and now, all of it had turned into his terrifying aura and power. It was extremely frightening. After being seriously injured by Yi Shiwen's attack, he no longer held back. On the contrary, his entire aura had risen to the peak. You will regret forcing me to reveal my true form. Your true form? So what? No matter how much you erupt, you will still die in the end. Yi Shiwen sneered, not taking the Imperial Killer's words to heart at all. Young man, I think you'd better not underestimate the Imperial Killer's words. Otherwise, you will regret it. Even I dare not ignore his words. The nine-headed holy sage said in a low voice. Unknowingly, several half-step sovereigns had already surrounded Yi Shiwen. So what if I ignore him? You might be afraid of him, but I'm not. If I were in the same realm as you, killing you would be a piece of cake. Yi Shiwen said directly, not taking it to heart at all. I don't think you will have that chance. Jade Sovereign roared. His jade chariot charged forward. It was indeed terrifying. It had an earth-shattering power. That kind of aura was absolutely matchless. If it was an ordinary celestial venerable trying to stop it, it would be akin to seeking death. I think so too. At that moment, the nine-headed holy sage let out a long roar, and 9 of his heads simultaneously shone with the light of magical laws. Each of his 9 heads carried the 9 most basic laws: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, time, and space. These 9 basic laws manifested in his 9 heads, and now all of them erupted at once, turning into a terrifying attack that could even kill everything in an instant. On the other side, the Heavenly Emperor War Venerable's spear swept through everything like a primal chaos dragon, directly sweeping towards Yi Shiwen. The Killing Emperor's figure disappeared once again. His boundless killing intention had evolved into all kinds of unique techniques and magical powers when he reappeared. And these techniques poured down towards Yi Shiwen like quicksilver. Rumble. The attacks of 4 half-step sovereigns drowned out everything. That horrifying attack caused the entire world to rumble and tremble, turning the primal chaos into complete chaos. Everyone's vision was blocked, and no one knew what was happening inside. Eastern Heavenly Venerable. In the martial epic's army, the Western Heavenly Venerable and the others did their best to open their eyes, wanting to see the current situation clearly. This was especially so for the martial epic's army. Practically all of them were relying on Yi Shiwen alone. If Yi Shiwen was defeated, the consequences would be unimaginable. The primal chaos was torn apart. The attacks of 4 half-step sovereigns punched a huge hole in the primal chaos, and no one knew where the hole went. However, just at this moment, a loud roar resounded. Then, a sword light directly swept out from the center of the 4 half-step sovereigns' attacks, rushing straight up and sweeping across the sky. Then, the surging primal chaos aura and the huge hole in the primal chaos completely disappeared. This sword light directly flattened everything. At this moment, everyone finally saw the situation. Yi Shiwen was not severely injured by the attacks of 4 half-step sovereigns as they had imagined. However, there was indeed someone bleeding in the primal chaos. That golden blood directly pierced through the primal chaos. This person was none other than the 9-headed Holy Venerable. Each of his 9 heads represented a law, a representation of his tyrannical strength. However, at this moment, 3 of his 9 heads were directly chopped off. These 3 huge heads were grabbed by Yi Shiwen's cheek-condensed hand. Chapter 3807. In the confrontation just now, they were unable to do anything to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's entire body was covered in a robe. It was the good fortune robe. Yi Xuan directly activated the good fortune robe. In addition to his virtuous tyrant golden body cultivation, he had reached an extremely terrifying level. This allowed him to directly block the attacks of 4 half-step sovereigns. He even had the strength to launch a counterattack and directly cut off 3 of the 9 heads of the 9-headed Holy Venerable. How can he be so strong? The Holy Venerables who were watching the battle from afar were completely dumbfounded. They were all spies sent by the various epochs to see how Yi Xuan would die. However, not only did they not see how Yi Xuan died, but they also saw how Yi Xuan killed in all 4 directions. Is he still human? How can he be so tyrannical? He didn't show any signs of losing even when fighting against 4 alone. How can someone be this strong? No wonder this martial venerable dared to go on an expedition to the ancient epochs. Even if he isn't the fortune heavenly lord, this level is still very terrifying. He is indeed being targeted by 4 half-step sovereigns, but he is also ridiculously tyrannical. At this moment, the 9-headed Holy Venerable glared at Yi Xuan with extreme anger. How dare you cut off my heads? The 3 heads that had been cut off had regrown again. However, they were obviously not as big as the previous 3 heads. They were clearly a size smaller. These heads were not just for decoration. They contained the 9-headed Holy Venerable's laws. Even metal could not damage them. However, if one was injured, then one's vitality would be seriously damaged. It was not easy to condense 1 head, let alone 3 heads that had been directly cut off. This was a huge blow to his vitality. So what if I cut off 3 of your heads? I will still cut off all 9 of your heads. Yi Xuan sneered. He did not take the 9-headed Holy Venerable's threat to heart. Given the relationship between the 2 of them, it was already a matter of life and death. For people had besieged him, and now they had even been injured by him. How could he let this matter go? Yi Xuan didn't feel the slightest bit of fear, even though he was surrounded by 4 half-step sovereigns. Fresh blood dripped from the fate sword in his hand. It was the blood that had dripped from a 9-headed Holy Senior's head. Fellow Taoists, we can't hold back any longer. This kid is troublesome. If we continue to hold back, I'm afraid we'll be defeated one by him. The Imperial Exterminator said, with overwhelming killing intent. His entire body had turned into a killing domain amidst the chaos. It's a pity. I've reincarnated for nearly 10 eras, yet I've never seen a hero like you. But today, you're really going to perish here. As soon as the Imperial Exterminator finished his words, a gigantic palace suddenly appeared behind him. On the signboard of the palace, there was only a single gigantic word, kill, emitting a boundless killing intent. This palace was covered in incomparable Tao marks and enchantments, forming an incomparably huge world. In the blink of an eye, the Imperial Exterminator's gigantic kill palace came crashing down on Yi Xuan. Its terrifying aura caused the entire chaos to surge with a terrifying chaotic tide. The gigantic kill palace came crashing down on Yi Xuan and turned the entire chaos into a killing domain. I'll kill you first, Yi Xuan shouted. Although he had absolute confidence in himself, he had to end this battle quickly. There was no guarantee that there were other half-step sovereigns hiding in the dark who could attack at any time. He could only choose to defeat them one by one. Dream on. At that moment, the other 3 half-step sovereigns also pounced over. They could also see that Yi Xuan's strength was very troublesome for them to deal with. The 4 of them could still kill Yi Xuan if they joined forces, but the consequences would be unimaginable if they were defeated one by one. 3,000 martial Tao incarnations. Yi Xuan roared, and 3,000 figures flew out of his body. Each of these 3,000 figures possessed extremely tyrannical strength. In an instant, they were divided into 3 waves, blocking the other 3 half-step sovereigns. You want to stop me? The 9 heads of a 9-headed Holy Venerable swallowed 9 of Yi Xuan's martial Tao incarnations in one bite. It was extremely ferocious. It could be said that Yi Xuan's 3,000 martial Tao incarnations were equivalent to 3,000 heavenly venerables appearing together in a short period of time. Ordinary peak heavenly venerables would be crushed by them, but these were half-step sovereigns. It was impossible to defeat them using such a method. In fact, they couldn't even stop them for long. They could only stall for time. In front of him, the Imperial Exterminator's expression became even colder. "Marshal Great Venerable, you sure talk big. Do you think you can kill me in such a short period of time?" The Imperial Exterminator roared. He only felt that he was being thoroughly underestimated. "So what if I kill you?" Yi Shiwen went against the flow. He knew that he didn't have much time left. His 3,000 martial Dao incarnations wouldn't be able to stop the others for long. His 3,000 martial Dao incarnations were refined by condensing his own primordial spirit using nomological laws. It was a type of magical ability used in group battles. It wasn't something that could be refined casually. If it was the kind that could be refined casually, it wouldn't even be able to stop them for a second. The Imperial Exterminator's kill hall pressed down directly, causing the entire primal chaos to sink into a heart-palpitating feeling. Even the heavenly venerables of the various epochs who were following from afar felt their hearts palpitate instantly. It was as if they saw mountains of corpses and seas of blood appearing in front of them again. God knew how many living beings had been killed to form such a terrifying scene. "Do you think this will work on me?" Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. The Martial Emperor's seal flew out of his hand and started to spin. Then it flew up and started to expand against the wind. It grew bigger and bigger. It only took a moment's effort. In just a moment, it had already grown to the size of a star. It wasn't inferior to the huge kill hall at all. Boom! The Martial Emperor's seal collided with the kill hall. The terrifying collision set off waves in the primal chaos. This time, both sides used their full strength. At that moment, Yi Shiwen entered the state of Human One. His eyes turned golden and looked extremely dazzling. The terrifying aura on his body had increased by another level. However, this was just the beginning. Bang! The kill hall shook. The Imperial Exterminator, who had directly pressed down on the kill hall, felt his whole body trembling. The terrifying power was reflected back, causing him to tremble from head to toe. Impossible! He discovered that Yi Shiwen's strength had increased by another level. This was the most unbelievable part. He could feel that Yi Shiwen was already extremely strong. In fact, he was even stronger than him. Although he was a little unwilling to believe it, this was the truth. However, the current Yi Shiwen was much stronger than before. This kind of aura even made his heart palpitate. "Kill him." The kill hall flew back again and pressed down. It was like a huge world was pressing down. This was a world of killing. "Oomph." Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He stretched out his hand and directly turned it into a sharp sword. It directly cut the world of killing into two halves. Then, the sword light ruthlessly bombarded the killing palace with irresistible force without losing any of its momentum. The kill hall, which was as huge and terrifying as a star, was directly sent flying. The power of Yi Shiwen's sword was much more terrifying than before. All kinds of martial arts techniques were at his fingertips, and they erupted with earth-shattering and dreadful might. After directly blasting the kill hall, Yi Shiwen directly rushed to the front of the Imperial Exterminator. It had to be said that the Imperial Exterminator was indeed an extremely powerful and terrifying existence. The martial arts of the killing path had erupted with unimaginable power in his hands. However, it was useless. In front of Yi Shiwen, who had absolute strength, no matter what the Imperial Exterminator's attack was, Yi Shiwen didn't even need to deliberate to launch an attack. He could casually break all of the Imperial Exterminator's resistance. Almost at the beginning of the fight, the Imperial Exterminator was already at a complete disadvantage. In front of Yi Shiwen, all of his resistance seemed so useless. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's proficiency in martial arts was far higher than the Imperial Exterminator's. Yi Shiwen could let the Imperial Exterminator's attack fall on his body. However, the Imperial Exterminator couldn't let Yi Shiwen's attack fall on his body. Bang! It was just one move. In an instant, both sides had exchanged thousands of moves. Yi Shiwen's crushing power finally made the Imperial Exterminator reveal a flaw. It wasn't that the Imperial Exterminator didn't notice this flaw, but he had no choice. In the face of absolute strength, Some things that weren't supposed to be weaknesses became weaknesses. Not to mention, this weakness had been exposed by Yi Shiwen. Puff! The Imperial Slaughter Emperor let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire body was directly bombarded by Yi Shiwen. It was too terrifying. His body exploded in the void. His primordial spirit reacted very quickly. In an instant, he wanted to reconstruct his body, wanting to resist. In this battle, he had already suffered a big loss. However, it wasn't over yet. He still wanted to counterattack. As long as he could hold on for a period of time, when the other three were free, it would be Yi Shiwen's death. However, Yi Shiwen wouldn't give him this opportunity. Slash the primal chaos. Yi Shiwen's sword slashed down. The primal chaos was directly slashed into two halves. Wherever the sword light passed, everything collapsed. Wherever the sword light passed, the Imperial Exterminator's spirit that was swept by the sword light was instantly vaporized, turning into nothingness. A miserable scream shook the primal chaos. An unimaginably powerful half-step sovereign had fallen in front of everyone just like that. Many heavenly venerables felt extremely cold. Their bodies were covered in cold sweat. Chapter 38:08. The entire process was too fast. From the moment Yi Shiwen suddenly erupted to the moment he killed the Imperial Killer, both sides had exchanged blows many times. However, in terms of time, it was actually not that long. In just a moment, the killing was completed. This scene shocked everyone. It was too domineering. Everyone was shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength and power. At this time, Yi Shiwen was in his strongest state. This was also his biggest trump card. He had nothing to be afraid of unless a true sovereign-level character appeared in front of him. He was not afraid of anyone at the level of a half-step ruler. Impossible. Although the Imperial Killer's strength is not the strongest, how could someone kill him in such a short time? Even the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord could not have done so. For the first time, the nine-headed Holy Venerable felt a chill run down his spine. At this moment, Yi Shiwen looked extremely terrifying. They originally thought that Yi Shiwen would be able to stop them from killing one of them with all their might by conjuring 3,000 martial arts incarnations. That was wishful thinking. If it were that easy, all the half-step sovereigns would have died a long time ago. This was almost impossible. Jade Lord's expression became even more solemn. The fighting spirit of the Supreme War Venerable also became more intense. He desperately killed the 3,000 martial arts incarnations in front of him. All of this happened too quickly. It happened so quickly that they had no way to stop it. It just happened. This is nothing. I can do what the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord could do back then. Yi Shiwen sneered. Back when the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord had not achieved the Tao, the ancient era invaded the Fortune God dynasty. He faced several half-step rulers and killed more than half of them by himself. The rest fled. This battle also established the supreme prestige of the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord. The Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord, who was still a half-step ruler at that time, became famous throughout the ages. All the ancient eras knew that there was such a terrifying existence in the martial era. You want to replicate the legend of the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord? How can I let you succeed? The nine-headed Holy Venerable opened his 9 mouths again and spat out countless laws that swept across the sky. In an instant, the entire world was swallowed up, including Yi Shiwen's countless 3,000 martial arts incarnations. You won't let me succeed? I'll kill you first. Yi Shiwen instantly pounced towards the nine-headed Holy Senior. He smashed the entire primal chaos into smithereens. The aura on his body was burning to the extreme. It was simply too terrifying. When the nine-headed Holy Venerable saw Yi Shiwen charging at him, he looked up to the sky and let out a long roar. Boundless divine light burst forth from his body, and the laws of the half-step sovereign realm expert weaved together. He wasn't afraid of Yi Shiwen at all. Bang! An incomparably loud rumble was heard as a flower of blood blossomed in the chaos. Someone was bleeding in the chaos. Everyone looked over and realized that it was none other than the nine-headed Holy Venerate. Previously, Yishiwen had used the Sword of Fate to cut off 3 heads of the 9-headed Holy Venerable. Now, Yishiwen had used the revered martial seal to smash the 9-headed Holy Venerable into pieces. The 9-headed Saint Venerable retreated repeatedly, howling in pain. Each of his heads was the condensation of a type of fundamental law. Now that one of them had been directly smashed, he was in so much pain that he kept howling in rage. Much stronger than before. The remaining 8 heads of the 9-headed Holy Venerable revealed a horrified expression. Yishiwen had cut off 3 of his heads with a single slash just now. However, Yishiwen had basically used all his strength back then. It wasn't like what he was doing now. Yishiwen was able to smash one of the 9-headed Holy Venerable's heads with a simple attack. Yishiwen sneered as he watched the 9-headed Holy Venerable's shattered head regrow. "I'd like to see how many times these heads of yours can regenerate. I'll kill you as many times as you can regenerate." Arrogant, the 9-headed Holy Venerable roared. His entire body was shrouded in a kind of shocking primal chaos light. 9 types of terrifying laws directly rushed into the sky. His 9 heads directly turned into 9 terrifying laws and blasted towards Yishiwen. This was his forbidden secret technique. When facing ordinary strong enemies, he only needed to use one of his heads. However, when facing Yishiwen, he still felt that it wasn't safe even if he used all 9 heads. "Sword come!" Yishiwen shouted loudly. The Sword of Destiny directly flew out and integrated into his arm. At this moment, Yishiwen's entire arm had turned into an extremely terrifying holy sword. The sword light swallowed and constantly blasted a terrifying hole in the primal chaos. It was extremely powerful. Bang! 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 Yishiwen directly rushed forward. In the face of the 9-headed Holy Venerable's laws, Yishiwen simply raised his hand and continued to slash down. His speed seemed slow, but it was actually very fast. In just a moment, he had already split apart all the laws. They couldn't pose the slightest threat to him at all. When he split apart the last law, he had already arrived in front of the 9-headed Holy Venerable. The 9-headed Holy Venerable didn't expect Yishiwen to be so strong that he could break through his attack so easily. He wanted to hide, but he discovered that the aura around his body had already been locked. It was impossible for him to escape. Yishiwen's movements were dreamy and illusory. He directly rushed in front of the 9-headed Holy Venerable. His movements were graceful like a celestial being, but they contained extremely terrifying power. "I'll fight you to the death." At this moment, the 9-headed Holy Venerable couldn't dodge in time. He could only let out a long roar and fight Yishiwen head-on. His 9 heads turned into the sky, full of divine law light, and crazily spurted out. Yishiwen's arm was like a treasured sword, directly sweeping away the divine law light. That terrifying power almost cut through the primal chaos. Countless laws of the primal chaos set off a storm. It was just a simple sword, but it had broken all the magical powers of the 9-headed Holy Venerable. It was completely useless. Yishiwen's attack was too direct and simple, but it was more useful than anything else. At this moment, Yishiwen's arm swept across like a sword, directly chopping off one of the 9-headed Holy Venerable's heads. It fell into the primal chaos, and no one knew where it landed. Blood was shed in the primal chaos once again. At this moment, the 9-headed Holy Venerable no longer had any thoughts of continuing to fight Yishiwen. Such a simple exchange had already made him understand the gap between him and Yishiwen. In particular, Yishiwen, who had entered the human unification realm, was truly tyrannical to an extremely terrifying extent. Even the legendary Fortune Heaven lore back then was probably not as powerful as Yishiwen. The 9-headed Holy Venerable kept retreating, trying to avoid Yishiwen's defense. However, how could Yishiwen let him go at this time? He had already glanced at the other 2 people from the corner of his eyes. The Imperial Warlord and Jade Lord were about to kill all his martial arts incarnations. There was not much time left for him. "You're only thinking of leaving now? Isn't it a little too late?" Yishiwen's figure was too fast. Time laws were directly formed under his feet. The speed laws had already advanced into the time laws. His speed was really fast to the extreme. The nine-headed holy venerable retreated rapidly. His speed had also advanced from the speed laws to the time laws. For a half-step sovereign, this was the most basic quality. It was nothing at all. However, his speed was still not as fast as Yishiwen. Yishiwen had almost caught up to him in an instant. Above Yishiwen's head, the martial honor seal was spinning. Then, in an instant, it crushed down like an ancient sacred mountain. Bang! Bang! Two more heads of the nine-headed holy venerable were directly smashed. He screamed in pain again, but there was nothing he could do. At this time, Yishiwen was extremely terrifying when he attacked with all his strength. His arm was like a sword as he directly swung it out. Puff! Puff! Another two heads were directly chopped off. The nine-headed holy venerable was even more afraid. As soon as he came up, 5 of his heads were directly smashed by Yishiwen. They did not even have time to grow back. In other words, the time was too short, and Yishiwen did not give him such a chance. The remaining 4 heads of the nine-headed holy venerable opened their bloody mouths and directly bit down on Yishiwen. Almost in an instant, they were about to bite Yishiwen to death. However, how could Yishiwen give him such a chance? His arm was like a sword. With a slash of his sword, another 2 heads were directly chopped off. At this time, only 2 heads were still on the neck of the nine-headed holy venerable. The time and space heads were still there. The nine-headed holy venerable felt extremely aggrieved. In front of Yishiwen, he did not have a chance to fight in all the areas that he was good at. In other words, Yishiwen did not give him a chance at all. He directly destroyed all of his resistance. There are still 2 heads left. I'll chop them off together. Yishiwen laughed loudly and chased after him again. The nine-headed holy venerable turned around and ran. Up until now, he had lost all of his courage. He did not dare to fight with Yishiwen at all. Stop! How dare you? At this time, not far behind Yishiwen, Jade King and the Supreme Warlord had also gotten rid of the entanglement of Yishiwen's martial arts incarnation and rushed over on the spot. They wanted to stop the nine-headed holy venerable from being killed. Otherwise, they would be too weak. Go! Yishiwen roared. Above his head, the martial honorable seal flew out directly. The tool spirit within it had awakened and transformed into another Yishiwen. It directly blocked the Supreme Warlord and Jade King. Although this was only the tool spirit of the martial honorable seal and could not compare to Yishiwen's actual body, it was still enough to block them. The 2 of them were blocked by the tool spirit of the martial honorable seal. They could only watch as Yishiwen killed the nine-headed holy venerable with 1 slash of his sword. The nine-headed holy venerable was slashed in half on the spot. Even his spirit and physical body were destroyed together. Chapter 38:09. After killing the nine-headed holy venerable, his aura soared to the peak. He turned around and glared coldly at the 2 half-step sovereigns, the Jade Monarch and the Supreme War Sovereign. The martial ancestor seal revolved around his body continuously. Under the all-out attacks of 2 half-step sovereigns, the martial ancestor seal only lasted for a short period of time before it was defeated. Although the martial saint seal was a top-notch half-step sovereign's Dao tool, it was only a Dao tool. It could not compete with a true half-step sovereign's. Yishiwen's magic power was burning like a flame. The terrifying energy that gushed out of the supreme ancestral symbol was so huge that it was visible to the naked eye. One could even see the laws of talisman, Dao, flying up and down. It was a terrifying scene. In the entire chaos, it was like a lighthouse illuminating everything. It's your turn now. Yishiwen grinned and looked coldly at the 2 people in front of him. Both of them looked dignified. If Yishiwen had said this at the beginning, then they would have thought that he had lost his mind. After all, how could he possibly contend with both of them? But now, Yishiwen had killed 2 half-step sovereigns in a row. It had thoroughly established his peerless ferocity. This battle would certainly be spread throughout the primal chaos for countless eras. Just like the battle with the Fortune Heaven Lord, Yishiwen's combat strength was too terrifying. Do you want to defy the heavens? Jade King looked coldly at Yishiwen. So what if you're heaven-defying? I've said it before. From the moment you dare to stop me today, you're all dead. No one can save you. Yi Shiwen sneered. You defeated us one by one before. Do you think you still have the chance to do so now? The martial Saint Seal sneered. The spear in his hand trembled slightly. As the terrifying spear light pulsed, the entire primal chaos shook violently. It was extremely rhythmic, like a real heartbeat. Boom! The Jade Monarch moved in an instant. His body flickered with endless green light. The light broke through eternity and manifested in reality. Then, a jade sword appeared in the Jade Monarch's hand. The jade sword flickered with terrifying light. It carried an astonishing bloody light as it slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Jade King's face flashed with a cold smile. It was a sinister smile. Even a half-step sovereign would be seriously injured if they were to take this sword head-on. At this point, there was nothing left for him to hide. He directly used the jade sword. The martial Saint Seal could also feel the terror of this jade sword. He suddenly remembered a legend about Jade King. In the ancient legend, Jade King's original body was actually a jade sword. His original body was a supreme great figure in a long time ago. Later on, that great figure fell, and this jade sword was lost. Under a coincidence, it was contaminated with the aura of creation and gained its own consciousness. Slowly, it became the Jade King of today. All of this was originally just a legend because no one had actually seen Jade King's true form. Even when facing enemies, Jade King had always been driving his jade chariot, sweeping through all the powerful enemies. No one could stop him at all. But now, Jade King actually used it. Obviously, he wanted to kill Yi Shiwen no matter what. Yi Shiwen was not afraid at all. On his body, the sword of fate turned into a shocking sword rainbow and met the jade sword head-on. Clang! There was a sound that sounded like gold and iron colliding. The two swords from both sides directly collided, and an endless burst of light burst out. However, Yi Shiwen found that his sword of fate was actually at a disadvantage. He did not know what material this jade sword was made of, but it was actually a bit stronger than the sword of fate. After just one collision, a trembling sound came from the sword of fate. Ha ha! The sword of fate is not bad, but you can't stop my sword. At this time, Jade King just laughed presumptuously. Yi Shiwen had forced him to use his original body. Then, he would make Yi Shiwen pay the price with his life. But at this time, how could Yi Shiwen give him such a chance? He directly let out a long roar and instantly attacked Jade King. Although the material and level of this jade sword slightly crushed the sword of fate, it had a fatal weakness, and that was Jade King himself. This jade sword was too strong, but its master, Jade King himself, was not so strong. Although the condensed body was also very tyrannical, it was not like his original body that people could not resist. In an instant, Yi Shiwen had already rushed in front of Jade King. Jade King was shocked and angry because he had also discovered this point. His original body was indeed very strong, and Yi Shiwen could only use the sword of fate to barely resist it. But his original body would become his biggest weakness. Once his original body was defeated, then the jade sword would be useless no matter how strong it was. Roar! The Jade Monarch let out a long and loud roar. The entire primal chaos shook violently in an instant. Then, an endless amount of blue light erupted and turned into a terrifying torrent. It seemed as if it wanted to stop Yi Shiwen's advance. But in the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen used his hands to tear the blue torrent that covered the sky into two halves. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Send you to hell. Yi Shiwen's fist directly blasted towards Jade King. It directly locked on to all of Jade King's escape routes. There was no way for him to resist, and there was no way for him to dodge. He could only take it head-on. In an instant, Jade King grew into the size of an ordinary person. Then he also slapped out a crystal-like palm and clashed with Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Bang! Jade King suffered a huge loss under the attack, and his entire body was instantly sent flying. At this moment, Yi Shiwen's power was so violent that even a half-step ruler could not resist it head-on. Just as Yi Shiwen was about to pursue further, A long spear fell from the sky directly in front of Yishuan. Yes, it didn't stab out. Instead, it seemed as if it was being passed out. However, its might was tyrannical and dreadful. It almost tore the entire world into two halves. Bang! The spear directly blasted into Yi Shiwen's body, and the terrifying spear light drowned everything. However, before the Supreme Warlord could show a slight smile of relief, he saw that Yi Shiwen had already rushed in front of him. So fast. At this moment, the Supreme Warlord felt that the long spear in his hand had become lighter. He actually could not stab Yi Shiwen. Then, he only felt that a sword light cut through the eternal peace and directly cut open the chaos, reproducing the true meaning of the creation of the world. It was as if a demon had awakened from within. Pucci! A terrifying wound appeared on the Supreme Warlord's body, and blood sprayed out like rain, splashing in the chaos. At this moment, the Grand Warlord had already traversed tens of millions of kilometers in the chaos. If he hadn't suddenly sensed danger and escaped without any hesitation, he would have been sliced in half instead of a horrifying wound that was so deep that his bones could be seen. Yishuan's attack was too fast, and he did not hold back at all. At this moment, when he fought with Yishuan again, the feeling was completely different from before. At this time, Yishuan was extremely terrifying, and he would be seriously injured in a head-on collision. How can there be such a strong person? He thought that he had reached the peak of the half-step sovereign realm, but he did not expect that one day he would be so embarrassed by a heavenly master. At the same time, Yishuan did not continue to chase after him, but at the same time, he pounced on the Jade Monarch. At this time, the Jade Monarch had only just regained his footing, and Yishuan's attack fell like a storm again. The 6 paths of Reincarnation Fist, Buried Sword Technique, Sword of Fate, Martial Master Seal, Universe Creation Palm, and all kinds of unique skills fell in an instant. In Yishuan's hands, all kinds of unique skills were at his fingertips, and there was no obstruction at all. All kinds of unique skills burst out in an instant. Even the Jade Monarch had no way to block the bombardment of so many martial skills at the same time. Even if he wanted to block, every time he organized enough defense, Yishuan's Universe Creation Palm would fall directly. This was the unique skill that the Fortune Monarch was famous for, and its power was naturally extremely terrifying. With just one strike, he had completely destroyed the defense he had put together. At this time, the Jade Monarch finally understood how terrified the 9-headed Saint Venerable and the Imperial Killer were when they fought against Yishuan alone. At this time, Yishuan did not look like a human at all, but a huge monster, a monster that could destroy everything. Now, after Yishuan seriously injured the Taiwan Warlord, he did not continue to chase after him, but instead went after the Jade Monarch. It was obvious that he was taking advantage of the time difference, so that the Taiwan Warlord would not have time to support him. Are you so confident that you can kill me in such a short time? The Jade Monarch roared, and the spiritual power in his body kept urging. He wanted to pull back the Jade Sword, but he found that it was impossible. The Sword of Fate was entangled with his Jade Sword. Although the material of the Sword of Fate was a little worse than his, it was obvious that he could get rid of it for a while. How long do I need to kill you? Yishuan directly hit the Jade Monarch with another blow, and the Yuzun was almost blown away, and he was directly killed. This was an extremely terrifying blow, and the Jade Monarch bled directly. Then, another huge Martial Master Seal fell. Bang! The Jade Monarch screamed, and his body and soul were directly smashed. Chapter 38:10. In the distance, many people in the primal chaos were dumbfounded. Some were even terrified. 4 half-step sovereigns were a terrifying lineup. Even if the opponent was a half-step sovereign, he would still be considered lucky if he managed to escape. However, Yishuan didn't take the normal path. Not only were the 4 half-step sovereigns unable to do anything to him, but he was also killing them in a frenzy. Only one was left. The Supreme King Zhanzun was completely terrified when he saw this. Even if he was very confident in himself, he wouldn't be that arrogant. Obviously, Yishuan had already surpassed the realm of mortals. He He had surpassed the realm of understanding. Yishuin's gaze made the tyrant warlord's hair stand on end. He felt a chill run down his spine. One left. Next, it's your turn, Yishuin said softly. It was as if he was talking about something very ordinary. He didn't care about the tyrant warlord, a famous existence in the primal chaos. Warlord, are you trying to force me into a life and death struggle? The tyrant warlord said. With just you? Can you do it? Yi Shiwen sneered. The fact that you came out to stop me means that your fate is sealed. You won't live. Do you think I'm the only one here? If you really force me into a dead end, someone will come and kill you. They might even invite a sovereign Dao treasure to kill you. The tyrant warlord threatened. At this time, Yi Shiwen looked incomparably terrifying. The fight just now also made him understand that Yi Shiwen wasn't just looking at him. When they fought before, he really felt terrifying. He might even die if he wasn't careful. That was why he had no choice but to talk nonsense with Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, with his personality, he would have killed Yi Shiwen a long time ago. Yi Shiwen sneered. He looked around and said, I'll kill whoever dares to come out. There's no limit to the number of half-step sovereigns I can kill today. So what if I become the enemy of the entire world? Many people couldn't help but gasp when they heard Yi Shiwen's words. They didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would be so arrogant. Yi Shiwen's current killing situation was already exaggerated enough. There was actually no upper limit. Was he planning to kill all the half-step sovereigns? No one could say for sure how many ancient eras existed in this world. Although not every era had a ruler, every era had at least one half-step ruler. No one knew how many half-step rulers existed in the primal chaos after so many years. Even though many half-step rulers had aged, withered, and transformed into Daos, the ones that remained were still terrifying. These people were waiting for an eternal existence. Some of them couldn't wait for that time and died of old age in their own seals. Some of them fought with all their might, tried to destroy the current era in order to seize life, defying the heavens and changing their fates, just like how Heavenless Demon Monarch and the others had used Ouyang. But there were still many people hiding in the chaos. Did Yi Shiwen actually want to become enemies with these people? Everyone was horrified in their hearts. However, Yi Shiwen didn't feel anything strange about it. After all, he was too strong. It was unprecedented for him to reach this step. Even the Lord of Good Fortune, Heaven, hadn't reached this step when he was still a heavenly master. Therefore, the road ahead of him was too narrow. Others might be afraid of such opponents, but he wasn't. The more such opponents there were, the more likely it was for him to break through after pushing himself to the limit. He was too strong. Once he broke through, he would be even more terrifying. Half-step sovereigns, once he reached that step, would really shock the world. Sure enough, in the primal chaos, powerful auras flickered one after another, but in the end, no one made a move. These half-step sovereigns were all watching the battle. They wanted to make a move, but they didn't dare to. Yi Shiwen's display of strength had truly frightened them. At the same time, they knew that Yi Shiwen's slaughter had a limit. He couldn't kill them all, and he couldn't destroy all the eras. As long as he stopped, everything would be fine. If they rushed out at this time, they would definitely die. Just like the Imperial Exterminator, Nine-Headed Saint Venerable, and Jade Monarch, they could be easily killed. No one was willing to block the lightning for others. They hadn't witnessed the legendary Great Era, so they couldn't die here. Even the Supreme War Venerable wouldn't have come out if he knew that Yi Shiwen was so terrifying. Look, no one came out at all. It seems that you will die today, Yi Shiwen said with a grin. Do you want to watch him do whatever he wants? The Supreme War Venerable roared, as if he was shouting at those who were watching indifferently. Watch him defeat us one by one. If it were him, he would probably watch, but at this time, he seemed a little sad and angry. But there was nothing he could do. Clearly, they had already made up their minds. At this time, Yi Shiwen took a step forward. He no longer had the patience to continue waiting. His body was in perfect harmony with one state, and he couldn't wait any longer. His current state was very strong, and his physical strength was many times more tyrannical than before. but he still couldn't maintain the state of perfect harmony with one for a long time. Countless golden lights erupted from Yi Shiwen's body. That terrifying aura shocked the entire primal chaos. He was going to attack with his full strength this time, and no one would obstruct him this time. It wasn't like when he had killed those 3 people before. Everyone had been obstructed. This time, he could use all his strength, and this really showed everyone how terrifying he was. Yi Shiwen's attack shattered the chaos. The Supreme War Venerable was forced to his limit, and he also burned together. He held his spear and fought with Yi Shiwen for the last time. Although he was unwilling to die, he didn't lack the courage to fight. After all, he was someone who had reached the extreme. Clang! The 2 sides collided directly. Yi Shiwen's attack fell on the hand of the Supreme War Venerable's Imperial War Spear. In an instant, the body of the Imperial War Spear constantly hissed and trembled. Just one attack, and the Supreme War Venerable's palm exploded. He almost couldn't hold the spear in his hand and was about to be killed. This was an extremely terrifying expedition. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold and ruthless. He attacked again, taking advantage of the Supreme War Venerable's inability to hold the spear to attack again. This was an extremely terrifying attack. The Supreme War Venerable was injured in one attack, and he was already at a disadvantage. It would be difficult to snatch back the spear no matter what. And Yi Shiwen's subsequent attack also proved this point. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen was ruthless and ruthless. Every collision was extremely terrifying, and the chaos was shaking. The attack of a person of this level was unimaginably powerful, no matter what. Puff! Finally, the Supreme War Venerable directly retreated, vomiting blood again and again. He had forcibly received such a terrifying attack from Yi Shiwen so many times, and he had already suffered serious internal injuries. He was only forcibly suppressing them with his powerful cultivation. But now, he finally failed, and he couldn't resist the current Yi Shiwen. Just at that moment, a palm print appeared on his chest, and this palm directly pierced through his body. The golden armor on his body couldn't stop Yi Shiwen's palm, and everything was destroyed. Yi Shiwen's expression still didn't change, and he just said lightly, "Today, it's over. It's time to end it." Universe Creation Palm. Yi Shiwen's palm fell, and the entire chaos rotated with it. The universe was in his palm. At this time, the Universe Creation Palm that Yi Shiwen displayed was much stronger than before, and its power was also tyrannical to an unimaginable degree. "I'm not willing." The Supreme War Venerable roared to the extreme, and his body directly transformed into a height of 10,000 feet. His spiritual power and blood essence were burning all over his body, and he wanted to contend with Yi Shiwen's palm. Bang! In the end, the Supreme War Venerable still failed, and his body directly collapsed, disintegrating into countless pieces in the chaos. It was a crushing defeat. His remnant spirit still wanted to hide and escape, but Yi Shiwen just opened his mouth and spat out a fire phoenix, directly killing the Supreme War Venerable spirit. And the Supreme War Venerable's physical body was directly caught by Yi Shiwen's hand. He directly poured it onto the world tree. He killed another half-step ruler. Perhaps Yi Shiwen's current strength had reached an unimaginable level. In the chaos, countless powerhouses were shocked by Yi Shiwen. And here, Yi Shiwen was invincible. The entire martial epic's army was seething. Yi Shiwen was invincible, and he killed 4 half-step rulers in succession, almost bringing them to a kind of peak. After killing the 4 experts, Yi Shiwen led the martial epic's army on another expedition. Under the attention of the entire chaos, they started their expedition. The only difference was that this time, no one thought that Yi Shiwen was overestimating himself. Such a powerful existence could be said to be the strongest person under the sovereign realm. He had reached this step with the body of a heavenly venerable. It was indeed shocking. No one could stop him, not even a half-step sovereign realm expert. The martial epic will prosper for billions of years again, all because of this person. Unless we can kill him, no one can stop him. A half-step ruler asserted. Yi Shiwen, who had killed 4 half-step rulers in a row, had already caused many people to tremble in fear. Many people had also witnessed his terrifying strength. The martial epic's army never stopped advancing in the primal chaos. They conquered another epic. This epic did not have a half-step ruler protecting it, or rather, there was a half-step ruler protecting it. However, when Yi Shiwen found it, he discovered that this epic's half-step ruler had died of old age in his own seal. Although the seal slowed down the flow of time, time still passed, and it could not be stopped. This epic fell in a short time. Even this epic's heavenly Tao could not stop it. Now, Yi Shiwen had many heaven-sealing talismans, all refined according to the records left by the Fortune Creation Heavenly Lord. After destroying one epic, the army quickly advanced to the next epic. Chapter 38:11. The great army of the martial epic marched majestically towards the next epic. In this epic, there was a half-step ruler counterattacking. It was much stronger than the previous epic. However, under Yi Shiwen's attack, there was still no possibility of resisting. With the heavenly law sealed, and their strength far inferior to the martial epic's army, their half-step ruler was the only possibility. However, in the battle with Yi Shiwen, that half-step ruler also fell. There was no difference between him and the others. At this moment, Yi Shiwen was like a peerless killing god. He would kill anyone who stood in his way. After 3 more epics were destroyed, Yi Shiwen's target was finally the epic of a terrifying existence. The Ghost Epic. The entire primal chaos was instantly in an uproar. No one expected that Yi Shiwen's final target was the Ghost Epic. When this news came out, the entire primal chaos was shocked. Different from the previous epics, the Ghost Epic was an epic that had a ruler. Just this bit of foundation made it different from the others. Epics that had produced sovereigns were clearly much more powerful than epics that had never produced sovereigns. This was because the epic where a ruler once existed was far stronger than the other epics. Moreover, there are all kinds of methods left behind by a ruler. This made it even harder to deal with them. This was especially true for the rulers. Aside from Sage Absolute Heaven, who had been confirmed to have died and even had a grave, the others had all disappeared. No one could confirm whether or not they were truly dead. If they were still alive and suddenly appeared, it would be horrifying. How the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch dominated the world back, then showed how horrifying these rulers were. When the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch conquered an epic with an ancient ruler, he also encountered a ruler from that epic suddenly appearing. As a result, a great battle broke out. Although the ruler was suppressed by the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch in the end, it showed that there was such a risk. Therefore, no one expected that Yi Shiwen would do such a crazy thing. Is he crazy? He must be crazy. Otherwise, how could he have such a thought? I'm afraid that after this battle, the entire martial epic will fall. He is too confident. However, he is not a half-step ruler. Furthermore, he is on par with a ruler. He is far from that. Countless strong existences communicated with each other. They all wanted to see the martial epic and the ghost epic clash badly. That way, they might be able to gain some benefits. Regardless of which one of them fell, they would all obtain great benefits. The fall of any great era would always be a sumptuous feast. Yi Shiwen's army swept in the direction of the Ghost Dao era. In fact, the Ghost Dao era's position had been known a long time ago. Their remnants had been discovered when they hid in the Ghost Dao era. Suddenly, an old man appeared in front of the entire martial epic's army, appearing in front of the army. Naturally, there could not be ordinary old people in this primal chaos. Furthermore, when the martial epic's army swept over, even sovereign emperors and heavenly venerates would not dare to get close, much less block the martial epic's army. Who is it? Tell me your name. Yi Shiwen shouted, causing the entire primal chaos to tremble. Yi Shiwen's gaze was sharp as if he wanted to see through this old man's identity. Since this person dared to appear before his army at this time, he was clearly not an ordinary person. Yi Shiwen even raised the magic power in his body. As long as this old man made a move, he would ruthlessly attack him. Name? I have nearly forgotten it. It has been too long. I am just an old man who has some friendship with the Ghost Dao era. I came here to ask for a favor on behalf of the Ghost Dao era. Can you let them off? The old man said slowly. Yi Shiwen said, Fellow Taoist, do you think that is possible? I destroyed several epochs, killed many half-step sovereigns, and raised my aura to its peak, all for the sake of destroying the Ghost Dao era in one go. Do you think I would give up like this? Yes, Yi Shiwen did not choose to destroy the Ghost Dao era immediately because he wanted to raise his aura. When a martial epoch's aura reached its peak, it would form a surging momentum. Anyone who tried to block the martial epoch's army would die. This was also a second-best choice. If Yi Shiwen had the cultivation of the Fortune Heavenly Lord, he would not have to do this. However, every time Yi Shiwen destroyed an epoch, the martial epoch's heavenly Tao would recover and become stronger. Naturally, the martial epoch's army would also receive support and become stronger. This was a continuous process. Yi Shiwen could tell that this old man was definitely a half-step sovereign. However, he did not know who this person was. Since this person was a half-step sovereign, Yi Shiwen had to show respect. However, even if this person was a half-step sovereign, if he wanted to block Yi Shiwen, he would still die. Yi Shiwen could feel his aura gradually growing. This aura could help him advance further, and it was even possible for him to become a half-step sovereign. This battle is unavoidable. From the day they invaded our martial epoch 10,000 years ago and caused our martial epoch to fall into misery and suffering, they should have made preparations. Yi Shiwen said indifferently, What? Are you going to block in front of me as well? The old man sighed and said, Alas, I already expected this day. Before Granny Ghost went to war, I already reminded her that the martial epoch's luck had not ended yet, so it shouldn't be destroyed at this time. However, in order to fight for the last chance, she still went. Now, not only did she die, but she also brought disaster to the Ghost epoch. This old man seemed to have known Granny Gouet for a long time and had a good relationship with the Ghost epoch. He could even tell that the martial epoch's luck still existed and should not be destroyed at this time. He seemed to feel that it was a pity. If Granny Gouet had listened to him, then perhaps the subsequent events would not have happened. However, this old man knew that the reason why Granny Gouet took such a risk was because she was forced into a dead end. She could not endure the destruction of this martial epoch. This might be her last chance. Therefore, she would not give up just because of a few words from him. Daoist friend, you are a person who understands heaven's will. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly. In fact, the higher one's cultivation was, the more he felt the terror of heaven's will. Heaven's will was like a knife, and you did not know when it would stab you. The so-called heaven-defying was just luck. It was fine to succeed every time, but once you failed, you would be consigned to eternal damnation and die without a burial place. Since Daoist friend has no intention of blocking our martial epoch's army, then get out of the way. Yi Shiwen shouted. The old man sighed and said, It is true that Granny Gouet cannot escape death. She knew that she would die, so she took the risk. However, Daoist friend, you have not been forced to that point yet. Why take the risk? If you kill too much, you will receive retribution sooner or later. Yi Shiwen frowned slightly and said, Retribution? I don't believe in retribution. I only do what I should do with a clear conscience. You said that I have not been forced to that point yet, but how do you know that I am not already at the edge of the cliff? When I am really forced to that point, will I still have a strength to resist? Heaven's will is like a knife, and heaven's will is like a net. I will not let it force me to a dead end step by step. Too much is easy to break. Too much is easy to break. Sometimes, taking a step back might not be a bad choice. The old man sighed and said, Since that's the case, I won't stop you. I've already done my part. The old man said and sighed. Then, he turned around and disappeared into the primal chaos. Yi Shiwen frowned and looked at the old man's disappearing figure. He felt that the old man's sudden appearance was definitely not some meaningless nonsense. He must be hinting at something. However, what else could he be hinting at? Could it be a trick left behind by the ghost epic's ruler? In fact, that was within Yi Shiwen's expectations. He was not a hothead. He would not come to the ghost epic without any preparation. However, the old man's appearance made him feel that he had to be more careful. Just what exactly was waiting for him in the ghost epic ahead? Yi Shiwen was not afraid. Instead, he felt excited. This was a step that he had to take. If the martial epic wanted to recover to its original state, devouring an epic that had once produced a ruler was a necessary and crucial step. There was a fundamental difference between an epic that had produced a ruler and an epic that did not. The degree of perfection of the heavenly law was also very different. After that old man, no one stood in Yi Shiwen's way. The martial epic's army successfully slaughtered its way into the ghost epic. It was a boundless world. It should be said that there were countless worlds. One of them was connected to an incredibly huge ghost domain world, forming the Ghost Path epic. Although it was not as big as the martial epic, it was much stronger than the other ancient epics. In this ghost epic, the auras of countless powerful ghost Dao experts covered many worlds. It was extremely horrifying. At this moment, the entire ghost epic was in a panic. Yi Shiwen's army did not hide their movements. They already knew that the martial epic's next target was them. They were immediately startled and angry. They were angry because they did not expect Yi Shiwen to really dare to target them. However, they were also shocked by the martial epic's army strength and Yi Shiwen's horrifying accomplishments. This made the ghost epic even more gloomy. Who could stop Yi Shiwen? Who could stop this terrifying killing god? Chapter 38:12. The entire ghost epic had not expected that the grand event back then, which everyone thought would bring the ghost epic back to its former glory, would turn out to be a source of disaster. Now that the martial epic came to take revenge, everything was destined. It was not that revenge was not forthcoming, but that the time had not come yet. In the past few years, the ghost epic had never thought that such a day would come. Although many ghost epic had fallen before, and this was no longer their era, as an epic that had once produced a ruler, no matter how arrogant the current epic was, they would carefully choose whether to make a move against the ghost epic or not. This was not only because their epic might have a ruler's contingency plan, making it difficult to deal with. More importantly, this would break some tacit understanding. The current strong epic would not make a move against an epic that had a ruler. Clearly, after the martial epic passed away, they would enjoy this tacit protection, as they were also a strong epic that had a ruler. Hence, many people roared in shock and rage. How dare they? How dare they do this? This was breaking the tacit understanding of many ancient epics. This was especially so in the future. The martial epic would become like them, an ancient epic. To think that they dared to break the rules now. This was simply intolerable. However, no one dared to come out at this moment. Yi Shiwen's ferocity was too great. Although he was not a ruler yet, no half-step rulers could stop him. Even if those strong half-step rulers wanted to kill him, they could not do anything about it. At this moment, ghostly cries and wolf howls filled the entire ghost epic. Yi Shiwen took the lead and flew to the edge of the ghost epic. Practically immediately, he felt the pressure of the ghost epic's heavenly Tao pressing down. A pair of horrifying eyes appeared in front of Yi Shiwen, looking like a pair of ghostly eyes. Closely following that, space rippled, and a face appeared, turning into a ghostly face laughing strangely. When the many martial epic experts saw this scene, they felt a chill run down their backs. This ghost epic truly lived up to being a strong epic that had a ruler. Now, the heavenly Tao actually felt a sense of danger and started gathering the will of the heavenly Tao on its own. Yi Shiwen watched coldly. He knew that the will of the ghost epic's malicious spirits caused the ghost epic's heavenly Tao to appear. However, all of this was meaningless. Yi Shiwen shouted coldly. The ghost epic's will of the Great Way, which made many martial epic elite experts feel a chill down their spines, instantly crumbled. It was like a horrifying force tore it apart. Yi Shiwen began to chant an incantation, and the heaven-sealing talisman flew out of his hand. In an instant, it flew into the sky, and an incomparably huge seal character flew out of the heaven-sealing talisman. This was the essence of the entire heaven-sealing talisman, and it was also the most important part. When the word seal flew into the sky of the ghost epic, it instantly triggered the roars of a group of ghosts. Their cries filled the entire ghost epic. Suddenly, a horrifying force counterattacked. Through the heaven-sealing talisman, it nearly turned Yi Shiwen into an idiot. That was the boundless, baleful aura, the resentment of countless malicious spirits that died tragically. All of it counterattacked. This was the ghost epic's instinctive counterattack. When it was sealed, it would immediately counterattack. However, when the boundless, baleful aura was about to pour into Yi Shiwen's mind, the figure of the world tree appeared behind him and drove away all the baleful aura. After Yi Shiwen retreated from the complicated bloodline of the enlightening mind ancient tree, the world tree returned to its origin, the world tree. Not only did its growth speed not decrease, but it also grew rapidly. In particular, the emperors, heavenly venerables, and even half-step rulers that Yi Shiwen had slaughtered were all watered onto the world tree. Although a portion of it was used to grow the world tree's fruit, a large portion was still devoured by the world tree. If Yi Shiwen's growth speed wasn't too fast, the world tree would be able to provide him with great protection. According to the legends, the world tree was comparable to a ruler. It would only appear when the world was first born. With the protection of a fully matured world tree, one would be innately invincible. Even if an opponent had a sharp ruler Dao weapon like the heaven-splitting devil axe, it would be difficult for them to break the defense of the world tree. It could be said that the world tree was invincible. Although the current world tree on Yi Shiwen's body was far from the rumored world tree, there was no doubt that it was already working hard towards the legendary perfect stage. No matter how much baleful aura there was, it was all absorbed by the world tree. It couldn't cause any harm to Yi Shiwen at all. Quick! Yi Shiwen shouted and pinched a seal. The heaven-sealing talisman suddenly flickered with a terrifying light and directly sealed the heavenly Dao. A huge array appeared under Yi Shiwen's feet. This array maintained the heaven-sealing talisman, which could continuously seal the ghost epic's heavenly Dao. West Tianzuan, the Heaven City Lord, and the others, who had been waiting for a long time, quickly stood in their respective positions. During this period of time, they weren't annihilating the first epic, so they were already very experienced. In just a moment, they were ready to replace Yi Shiwen in presiding over the great array and sealing the ghost epic's heavenly Dao. However, soon, they felt a powerful backlash constantly surging towards them through the array. At this time, they looked at Yi Shiwen in shock. Even when several of them joined forces, they still felt great pressure. The ghost epic's heavenly Dao could break the seal at any time. However, Yi Shiwen had almost single-handedly suppressed the ghost epic's heavenly Dao. From here, they could deeply feel the gap between them. Perhaps it was really big to an unimaginable extent. After West Tianzuan and the others helped to suppress the ghost epic's heavenly Dao, Yi Shiwen was able to free up his hands. He took the lead and shouted, "Go attack the ghost epic and take revenge for the people who died 10,000 years ago." The entire martial epic's army was seething. There were so many ancient epics, but the ghost epic was definitely one of the top ancient epics that the martial epic hated, because if they were killed by other ancient epics, they would be killed. However, if they died at the hands of the ghost epic, not only would they die, but they would also become malicious ghosts and be enslaved by the ghost epic. This was the reason why countless people were the most furious. Yi Shiwen's attack was equally ruthless. He took the lead and directly rushed into the ghost epic. At this time, the ghost epic's heavenly Dao had already been sealed. It looked like the sky was falling and the earth was splitting apart. Yi Shiwen directly slapped down with his palm. The horrifying power caused the ghost epic's world to sink instantly. The entire world was torn apart, and countless malicious ghosts and ferocious ghosts were instantly turned into nothingness. Without the protection of the Ghost Epic's heavenly Tao, Yi Shiwen could attack at will. Moreover, in the Ghost Epic, Granny Ghost had already been killed by Yi Shiwen. It could be said that she was now in an unprecedented state of weakness. Suddenly, at this moment, an incomparably horrifying aura directly locked onto Yi Shiwen. Then, the entire void distorted and shattered in an instant. An incomparably huge ghost ship directly broke through the space barrier and instantly rushed in front of Yi Shiwen, intending to smash him to death. This was none other than the epic ghost ship. It was also the supreme treasure of the entire Ghost Epic. It was extremely horrifying. When a ruler Dao tool attacked, its greatest might could even rival a ruler's horrifying power. This time, the epic ghost ship's horrifying might also deeply reflected this. Many peak experts watching from afar sneered. With a ruler Dao tool attacking, even if Yi Shiwen did not die, he would be severely injured. After this series of unforeseen events, it was not just the heavenly venerables who were acting as scouts who followed the martial epic's army to observe. Even the half-step rulers followed behind. However, they were not just spies. If the martial epic's army showed any signs of weakness, these people would immediately turn into hungry wolves and charge over. This was the most dangerous part of the martial epic's army this time. It did not seem dangerous, but in reality, it could be destroyed at any time. As long as the martial epic's army kept winning, these half-step rulers would only hide, not daring to show themselves. However, if the martial epic showed any signs of weakness, these half-step rulers might attack and kill the martial epic's army. Bang! The horrifying scene that followed stunned everyone. They only saw Yi Shiwen blocking the epic ghost ship's attack with his bare hands. Rumble! A huge mushroom cloud rose from the place where Yi Shiwen blocked the epic's ghost ship. This mushroom cloud continued to expand and engulfed everything, including Yi Shiwen and the epic's ghost ship. Suddenly, a horrifying aura surged out from there, drowning everything and tearing the mushroom cloud apart. At this moment, everyone finally saw Yi Shiwen's figure. He was as steady as Mount Tai and did not waver at all. That's the Creation Universe map. He actually brought the Creation Universe map with him. Many half-step rulers looked carefully and saw a faintly discernible picture scroll on Yi Shiwen's body. If it was not the Creation Universe map, what else could it be? No wonder he is not afraid and dares to provoke the Ghost Epic. It turns out that he brought the Creation Universe map with him. No wonder. With the Creation Universe diagram, the epic ghost ship really can't do anything to him. In any case, the epic ghost ship has lost its master in the end, but the Creation Universe diagram has a support. It looks like he really wants to destroy the entire Ghost Epic. This battle is going to be intense. Chapter 38:13. Many people finally understood why Yi Shiwen dared to provoke the entire Ghost Epic. It turned out that he also had the Universe Creation Map with him. With the Universe Creation Map, he could naturally contend against the Ghost Epic's Era's ghost ship. Even the Era's ghost ship couldn't stop Yi Shiwen's advancement. Endless stars flickered, chaotic aura surged out. At the border between the Ghost Epic and the chaos, the collision between the two parties caused a frenzy that drowned everything. It seemed to be 1,000 times, 10,000 times more terrifying than anything else. At this moment, the Era's ghost ship changed. It no longer looked like the ghost ship that could smash the world. Instead, it turned into a human figure. He was about 2 meters tall, and his figure looked like a puppet. It was a handsome middle-aged man, but his complexion was extremely pale. His eyes were dark green, like 2 balls of will-o'-the-wisps, looking incomparably frightening. After the transformation, this person's aura suddenly soared into the sky, becoming extremely terrifying. Heavenly Lord Yama. Yi Shiwen spat out these 2 words. Although he had never seen the Heavenly Monarch of Hell, it didn't prevent him from knowing about the Heavenly Monarch of Hell. He was the only person in the Ghost era who had reached the pinnacle of Sovereign Realm. It was said that Heavenly Lord Yama was a powerful half-step ruler when he was alive. He could be regarded as the top figure in the entire chaos. Later, he died in an accident. When the epic transformed into the ghost epic, he became the first innately born creature. Instead, he rose against the trend and successfully achieved the Great Way. He became the first and only ruler of the ghost epic. It could be said that Heavenly Lord Yama's life was very legendary. It was even recorded in the ancient books of the martial epic. Therefore, even if Yishiwen had never seen him, he could guess it immediately. In fact, only Heavenly Lord Yama could drive the era's ghost ship to this extent. Yishiwen could see that this was a backup plan left by Heavenly Lord Yama. A strand of his spirit awakened and integrated into the era's ghost ship. With the era's ghost ship as his body, he turned into a peerless expert. Although he definitely couldn't fight for a long time, he was undoubtedly much more terrifying than ordinary half-step rulers. Heaven and earth, Xian and Huang, nether Tao sovereign. In the end, this Yama heavenly monarch chanted. Immediately, the entire ghost epic became extremely horrifying. Mournful ghost cries rang out. Soon after, huge tombstones appeared in the void. These tombstones covered the sky and covered the earth. They were like bright stars shining in the sky. What was even more bizarre was that there were only 2 words carved on the tombstones: Martial Venerable. The 2 words were carved with fresh blood, and fresh blood was still flowing down the tombstones. The entire scene looked extremely terrifying and bizarre. Yishiwen's ears were also constantly transmitting a cold and gloomy voice. Martial Eminence. Martial Eminence. Martial Eminence. It seemed as if Yishiwen was buried in a huge graveyard after hundreds of millions of years. Yishiwen seemed to be able to see the tragic ending of his own death here. It seemed as if his graveyard had been summoned from countless years in the future. It's just an insignificant skill. Heavenly Lord Yama, your name has been passed down through countless eras in vain. Is this all you've got? Yishiwen shouted. His entire body flickered with endless golden light. It was as if a glorious sun rose from the chaos and broke the layout of the graveyard. The huge tombstones exploded on the spot. The entire eerie and terrifying scene disappeared without a trace. The malicious ghosts hidden in the tombstones also evaporated in an instant. How could Yishiwen be that simple? His exuberant vitality had reached such a terrifying level. He was the nemesis of these malicious ghosts. At this moment, Heavenly Lord Yama spoke for the first time. He looked at Yishiwen with a frightening gaze. Young man, you're very good, but it's not enough. Today's expedition to the Ghost Epic is the biggest mistake you've made in your life. You won't have the chance to correct it, Heavenly Lord Yama said coldly. At this moment, in the endless primal chaos, tombstones once again appeared. These tombstones were dripping with blood, and the 2 words revered martial artist on them were especially horrifying, giving people a strong sense of oppression. Drip, drip, drip. Unbeknownst to him, the dripping blood had already turned into a sea of blood. This terrifying sea of blood instantly split the world, cut off all auras, and directly swept towards Yishiwen. It's just wishful thinking if you want to stop me with this kind of method. Yishiwen sneered. He rushed over directly. His whole body seemed to have turned into a shocking sword aura, directly splitting the waves. This terrifying sea of blood set off thousands of blood waves, but it couldn't stop Yishiwen's advancement. It only delayed Yishiwen's footsteps a little. In just a moment, Yishiwen had already rushed in front of Heavenly Lord Yama. Heavenly Lord Yama's expression was extremely ferocious and terrifying. Behind him, a huge 6 paths of reincarnation appeared. This was the 6 paths of reincarnation that he had reconstructed. At this moment, it completely emerged. It could even be said that the origin of reincarnation and death in many eras originated from here, from Heavenly Lord Yama. This huge 6 paths of reincarnation was like a huge millstone, smashing down and smashing towards Yishiwen. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Yishiwen was not to be outdone. He also retaliated with the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Although the origin of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist could be traced back to Heavenly Lord Yama, he had absolute confidence in himself. If Heavenly Lord Yama's real body was here, he wouldn't have a chance of winning. However, he was only formed by a wisp of his primordial spirit carrying the Era ghost ship. If he couldn't even deal with this, he would be too weak. Boom! With a terrifying roar, the entire primordial chaos collapsed. The terrifying attack that swept out instantly shocked countless experts who were watching the battle in the entire primordial chaos. However, the two of them acted as if nothing had happened. They didn't care about such a collision at all. All the celestial masters understood that between the two of them, Heavenly Lord Yama's body was formed by the Era ghost ship, which was a Dominator Dao artifact. Yishuin had also integrated the creation universe map into his body. No matter what kind of attack, it would be difficult to shake these two Dominator-level Dao artifacts. Do you think you can stop me like this? Yishuin looked coldly at Heavenly Lord Yama in front of him. You can't kill me. You can't even hurt me. The foundation of an era with a Dominator is not as simple as you think. Heavenly Lord Yama said directly. His expression was indifferent, but the killing intent in his eyes couldn't be concealed at all. Yishuin understood that Heavenly Lord Yama was speaking the truth. Indeed, he couldn't hurt his opponent. To be precise, he couldn't hurt the Dominator Dao artifact. Generally speaking, the strength of a Dominator Dao artifact was even stronger than the physical body of an ordinary Dominator. However, he wasn't anxious because he knew that although it was difficult for him to hurt the Era ghost ship, he could sit back and watch it self-destruct. After all, it was only a wisp of spirit. How long could a wisp of spirit fuse with the Era ghost ship? This was his greatest advantage. Do you think what you're doing is useful? If your original body was here, you might be able to reverse the situation. But now, you're still far from it. Yishuin sneered. He wasn't discouraged. He knew that it was difficult for him to hurt the Era ghost ship unless he entered the half-step Dominator realm. However, this didn't prevent him from using this battle as a good opportunity to learn from each other and hone himself. Thinking of this, Yishuin didn't hesitate. He rushed forward and smashed a martial venerable seal. Clang! There was a huge roar like the sound of gold and iron colliding. Heavenly Lord Yama's body shook slightly, and Yishuin's attack vanished. It was difficult for the martial venerable seal to hurt the wisp of spirit of Heavenly Lord Yama, who was hiding in the Era ghost ship. Yishuin wasn't discouraged at all when his attack failed. He slashed with the sword of fate again. Boom! Just like the previous revered martial seal, the sword of fate only made Yama King sway slightly. Yama King simply ignored all of Yishuin's attacks by relying on the fact that he was an epic's ghost ship. He also attacked in an instant. The terrifying attack shook the entire ghost era. Countless malicious ghosts screamed and exploded. They turned into essence chi that filled the sky and formed a terrifying torrent that rushed towards Yishuin. However, Yishuin wasn't afraid at all. He forcefully took the attack with the universe creation map. Then he blasted with the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Boom, boom, boom. Yishuin's attack was like a storm that didn't stop. All kinds of attacks were launched by the 3,000 martial Daos. Both sides seemed to have gone crazy. They did not dodge at all, only clashing head-on with each other's attacks. Then, they forcefully stood and attacked, causing the entire Ghost Epic to crumble. The Martial Epic's army could still dodge, but the Ghost Epic's army had nowhere to dodge. They could only endure the impact of this destructive energy. It would have been fine if the Ghost Epic's Heavenly Dao protected them. However, the Ghost Epic's Heavenly Dao was still sealed. This made the orbital epic collapse even faster. After a long time, Heavenly Lord Yama finally couldn't hold on anymore. His wisp of spirit was finally exhausted. He revealed the appearance of the Era ghost ship again. Yishuin had just revealed a smile. Suddenly, the void seemed to have been torn apart by a terrifying force. A big hand came out of the void and grabbed towards Yishuin. Chapter 38:14. A huge hand tore threw everything in the void and swept out. The timing of this big hand's sweep was too accurate. It directly emerged at the moment when Yi Shiwen destroyed the soul of demon monarch Yama. As if it had been waiting for a long time, this attack finally found an opportunity. Yi Shiwen's universe map of creation immediately flew out and tried to block it. However, it was useless. The big hand directly grabbed the Era's ghost ship. Boom! In an instant, the terrifying aura of the Era's ghost ship broke out. It was several times more terrifying than before. The world was collapsing. It was too terrifying. The entire ghost era was shaking. Mountains collapsed, the earth cracked, the sky shattered, and the sea turned upside down. Everything seemed like doomsday. The Era's ghost ship blasted into the universe map of creation with unimaginable power. Although it couldn't penetrate the universe map of creation, it still blasted the terrifying power on Yi Shiwen. Puff! Yi Shiwen groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was seriously injured. He flew back for millions of miles before he barely stopped. However, Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change at all. Although he was attacked, he wasn't afraid at all. However, he still sighed in his heart. This attack was too timely. It was almost at the moment when he was exhausted. Obviously, the Era's ghost ship had been waiting for a long time. It was just waiting for the moment when he could relax. Yi Shiwen was also very clear about the origin of this big hand. To be able to drive the Era's ghost ship to this extent, there was no other possibility except Demon King Yama himself. Want to kill me? Unfortunately, this attack didn't succeed. You won't have a chance to succeed in the future. You've been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. He had already seen through Demon King Yama. He must be in a place where it was impossible for him to appear. Demon King Yama could barely tear the space and send an arm over. That was already his limit. It was unlikely for him to descend with his real body. If he had such an ability, he would have descended long ago. You should be trapped somewhere now. Even if you launch a sneak attack, you can only watch helplessly as your era is about to be destroyed by my hands. Yi Shiwen said coldly, "Young man, don't go overboard when you do things, or we'll meet again in the future." The Heavenly Lord of Hell's cold voice resounded. He didn't launch a further sneak attack. After his sneak attack failed, he knew that it was impossible to kill Yi Shiwen easily. He was also dumbfounded by Yi Shiwen's strength. Even half-step sovereigns were severely injured or on the verge of death after receiving his attack. Not to mention that Yi Shiwen was only a celestial master, yet he was able to block him to such an extent. Don't go overboard? Ha ha ha. How funny. Back then, when the Ghost Epic attacked the Martial Epic, I did not see you telling them to leave a way out. In the end, that was just an excuse. Yi Shiwen laughed and said, "In the end, you only have two sets of standards. Either you kill me today, or the Ghost Out era will die today. Do you really think I can't kill you?" The Heavenly Lord of Hell seemed to be angered to the extreme. He attacked again. The huge palm directly grabbed the Era's ghost ship. Then, the Era's ghost ship turned into a long saber. The saber light was unsheathed, shocking the world. This saber swept across thousands of miles and directly slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Although the body of this saber was not a saber, but the Era's ghost ship, there was no difference in the power when it was used. It was as if the Era's ghost ship had directly collided with it. The power was too terrifying. Facing such a terrifying attack, Yi Shiwen didn't move at all. His expression only became colder. "If your body was here, I would be afraid of you. Now it's just an arm. Watch me chop off your arm." As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, the saber fell directly in front of him. Even the river of time manifested and was directly cut into two halves. This saber seemed to be able to destroy the entire chaos in an instant. It was extremely domineering. This saber surpassed all the Saber Dao experts Yi Shiwen had seen before. As a ruler expert, all the great Dao was at his fingertips. A casual saber strike surpassed all the Saber Dao experts. When many half-step rulers saw this, they could not help but feel shocked. They felt that it was impossible to block. This is the strength of a ruler. This martial saint insisted on provoking the Ghost Dao era. Now, retribution has come. He will die today. Even the martial Dao Era's army will die. Many half-step rulers revealed sinister smiles. When they looked at the martial Dao Era's army again, it was like they were looking at food. To them, the martial Dao Era's army without Yi Shiwen's protection was indeed a dead end. No matter how many people they had, it was useless. Previously, they were afraid of Yi Shiwen's combat prowess, which was why they did not dare to interfere. Without Yi Shiwen, they were nothing. At this moment, the martial Dao Era's army cried out in alarm. That saber strike looked too fast, but they could see it clearly. They could even see the trajectory of this saber strike. It was the saber Dao laws and time laws that were brought out to the extreme. They could only watch as this saber strike was about to chop Yi Shiwen in half. Yi Shiwen, on the other hand, formed a seal with his hands. Countless talisman Dao laws emerged and linked with the past and present. In that instant, he had fused with the supreme ancestral symbol and entered the state of human one union, blossoming with a shocking immortal light. Rumble. Countless talisman Tao principles turned into a huge flower of the Great Way, protecting Yi Shiwen in it. It also welcomed the attack. Immediately after, a horrifying collision energy swept out, directly wiping out many worlds of the Ghost Dao era. Even the martial Dao Era's army was affected. Countless elites were wiped out, and they quickly retreated. Previously, they thought they had retreated far enough. Now, it looked like it was far from enough. The boundless energy tide drowned everything, including Yi Shiwen's figure. Everyone opened their magic eyes, trying to see Yi Shiwen being swallowed up by the energy tide. They did not know how Yi Shiwen was right now. It could be said that Yi Shiwen's current life and death affected the life and death of two epochs. If he did not die, the Ghost Dao era would die. If he died, even a martial Dao era might suffer a heavy blow. It was not impossible to repeat the situation of a pack of wolves biting a tiger to death. In that case, everything would become even more complicated. Suddenly, at this moment, a pair of golden hands tore open, and then Yi Shiwen's figure emerged. He used his hands to block the earth-shattering blade that was coming towards him. A trace of blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he suffered some losses in the collision. A ruler-level expert, even with only one hand, could severely injure or even kill a half-step ruler. That was a true ruler of countless epochs. However, what shocked everyone even more was that Yi Shiwen actually blocked it. He actually blocked it. How terrifying! Even among the half-step rulers, there is no such existence. The strongest person under the ruler level. He is now qualified to compete for this title. As long as he can hold on, even if the heavenly Lord of Hell is furious, he can't do anything about it. Being able to create a hand is already his limit, and I'm afraid there's also a time limit. As long as a period of time passes, he will have to retreat. Don't tell me he really succeeded? Many half-step rulers exclaimed. When they thought of this possibility, they only felt a chill down their spine. Yi Shiwen, who had the power to resist a ruler-level expert, was too terrifying. Heavenly Monarch Yama obviously knew that he could not manifest for a long time. Almost immediately, he raised his saber and slashed at Yi Shiwen. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Shiwen had to take every attack head-on, or in other words, he could only take it head-on. The Epic's ghost ship that had transformed into a long saber instantly locked all his escape routes. He had no way to evade. In other words, wherever he evaded, the saber would follow him. This was the terrifying strength of these powerful rulers. They did not give him the slightest chance to breathe. Scars began to appear on Yi Shiwen's body. They were getting more and more serious. His body was densely covered with cracks. Even though he had the protection of the Good Fortune universe map, and was wearing the Good Fortune treasure robe, and had entered the state of human one union, it was already so difficult to face only one arm of the heavenly Lord of Hell. The difference between the half-step ruler level and the ruler level was vividly reflected at this time. It was far beyond everyone's imagination. Everyone was amazed that Heavenly Monarch Yama had manifested an arm, but still had no way to kill Yishiwen. The time was almost up. From the depths of the distant void, Heavenly Monarch Yama's loud roar came. He had also discovered that he could not support such a manifestation anymore. He had reached his limit, but now he could only give up. He was extremely angry, but he could not kill the figure in front of him. He could only give up. Wu Zun, you will regret it. We will meet again in the future. When that time comes, it will be your death. Heavenly Monarch Yama made a blatant threat. However, Yishiwen did not move at all. He only said coldly, "You are already here? Do you want to leave without leaving anything behind? How is that possible?" Chapter 38:15. What? Yishiwen's words stunned King of Heaven Yama. He didn't expect Yishiwen to have such a reaction. At this moment, Yishiwen's voice just fell, and then his entire body suddenly flew up. Then, all the power condensed together, turned into a terrifying sword light, and directly swept out. /Destiny. At the most critical moment, Yishiwen finally comprehended /Destiny. This was the last sword of the 3 swords of destiny. It was said to be a terrifying attack that could seriously injure a ruler if he was not prepared. In an instant, it was as if the entire river of fate in the world had appeared all of a sudden. Then, it was completely reduced to nothingness by this one sword strike. Boom! The power of the river of destiny finally condensed, and a blow was launched, directly slashing a King of Heaven Yama's arm. Puchi. Heavenly Monarch Yama's arm fell off and blood splattered all over the primal chaos. Then the huge crack in the void also disappeared. Under Yishiwen's sword, the ripples disappeared without a trace. Wu Zun, I will definitely make you pay the price. Bang! As soon as King of Heaven Yama's voice fell, Yishiwen's body directly exploded. The injury caused by King of Heaven Yama's long saber didn't disappear, but he suppressed it. Now he couldn't suppress it anymore, and his whole body exploded, and his vitality was greatly injured. From Yishiwen's sword slashing down King of Heaven Yama's arm to Yishiwen's own body exploding, everything happened in a short period of time. Almost no one thought that at the last moment, before King of Heaven Yama retreated, such an unforeseen event happened. The arm of King of Heaven Yama that was cut off actually wrapped around the Ira's ghost ship and wanted to escape, but was caught by a big hand. Seal. Yishiwen had reconstructed his body at the most critical moment. He had then grabbed the arm of the Heavenly Monarch of Hell and sealed it. However, taking advantage of this time, the Ira's ghost ship directly penetrated the chaos and disappeared from everyone's perception. Although the Ira's ghost ship escaped, Yishiwen didn't have the slightest regret. He knew that he couldn't keep the Ira's ghost ship. If he was in peak condition, he might have a chance, but now his vitality was greatly injured, and there was no possibility. Therefore, he chose to directly grab King of Heaven Yama's arm, one at a time. Although it was only an arm of King of Heaven Yama, the energy contained in it was more than a half-step ruler. If he could water it on the world tree, it would be even more powerful than a complete half-step ruler. Moreover, he had thoroughly offended the Heavenly Lord of Hell this time. So, there was bound to be a big battle in the future. Now he could analyze a lot of information about the Heavenly Lord of Hell through this arm. Only by knowing oneself and knowing the enemy could one win 100 battles. For Yishiwen, there was no victory or defeat in this battle. It was a complete lose-lose situation. He had directly chopped off one of Heavenly Lord Yama's arms, which could be called shocking. Since ancient times, it was extremely rare for a half-step sovereign to achieve such a feat, let alone a heavenly master. It was the first time in history that a heavenly venerate could achieve this step. However, he also suffered a serious injury. If it wasn't serious, his body wouldn't have exploded. It was difficult to suppress the ghost energy left in his body by King of Heaven Yama, which directly affected his combat power. This result could only be regarded as a lose-lose. Yishiwen directly used all the strength in his body to suppress this hidden injury. On the surface, he could be regarded as recovering to his peak. The half-step sovereigns in the primal chaos were completely flabbergasted. Never in their wildest dreams would they have imagined that Yi Shiwen would actually dare to do such a thing. Moreover, he actually succeeded. For King of Heaven Yama, losing an arm was naturally not a serious injury, and it would grow back very quickly. However, the significance of this was extraordinary. This meant that Yi Shiwen was only a heavenly venerate, but he actually had the power to injure a ruler. Compared to the fact that Yi Shiwen had such power, they were even more shocked that Yi Shiwen had actually dared to be so ruthless. That was a dominator. He had said that he would chop off an arm, and he would chop it off just like that. He was willing to pay the price of being seriously injured to make King of Heaven Yama pay the price. Such a person was not ordinary. And in fact, the worst to provoke was actually this kind of person. I'm afraid the world has added another person who is not to be trifled with. It is indeed terrifying, and the key is that he is so ruthless. If it were us, we would be very happy to escape from the hands of a ruler. This kind of person, even if he slaughters a ruler in the future, I would not be surprised. Yi Shiwen's ruthlessness directly shocked them and made them wait and see. They clearly knew that Yi Shiwen might have been seriously injured in the process of fighting with King of Heaven Yama, but they still did not dare to act rashly. Who knew how injured Yi Shiwen was? If he still had strength left, wouldn't they be courting death if they rushed at him now? Moreover, at this point in the battle, it was obvious that Yi Shiwen's journey was over, and he could not go on to conquer the next era. Yi Shiwen felt that incomparably powerful auras in the chaos were boiling. Some of the half-step rulers were not willing to act rashly, but some seemed to be a little impatient, and it was possible that they would all come out together. However, he said unhurriedly, "If any fellow Taoist wants to come up and teach me, then come up yourself. Don't hesitate. My sword still lacks the blood of a few half-step sovereigns to draw a perfect end to this journey. He is just putting on an act, just an arrow at the end of its flight. Bluff." Many of the half-step rulers felt that Yi Shiwen was purely bluffing. They were still restless. Although the danger was great, the harvest was also great. Many of them were interested in Yi Shiwen's secret. A mere heavenly venerable was actually able to injure a ruler. This in itself was a miracle. However, at this time, a figure directly appeared in front of everyone, and a monstrous aura directly blocked the half-step rulers who were restless. Who else could it be but Qin Zun? Before this, Qin Zun had not made a move. However, at the most crucial moment, Qin Zun had made a move, directly stopping these half-step sovereigns from making a move. If these half-step sovereigns were allowed to make a move, the consequences would be hard to predict. Once it became a situation of a pack of wolves biting a tiger to death, it would be truly terrifying. Qin Zun's appearance also made many of the half-step rulers extremely vexed. Because of Qin Zun's appearance, they had already lost their only chance to attack Yi Shiwen. Now that Qin Zun had made a move to protect them, even if they were unwilling, they could only give up this opportunity. "Many thanks, Taoist friend." Yi Shiwen breathed a sigh of relief. Just now was indeed when he was at his weakest. Although he was already prepared, the terror of heavenly venerable Yama still exceeded his imagination. However, this experience was extremely valuable. After all, not everyone had the experience of fighting against a sovereign and surviving. I just showed up for a while. I didn't do anything at all. Just now, I was held back by a few half-step rulers. Otherwise, I should have been able to help you. Fortunately, Taoist friend, you are fine, Qin Zun said with some annoyance. He could naturally see that Yi Shiwen had suffered serious internal injuries. However, not dying in a fight with a ruler was already a kind of luck. It doesn't matter. Now that the matter is finally over, the damage that the battle from 10,000 years ago brought to the martial epoc's heavenly way can be considered to have made up for, Yi Shiwen said, while shaking his head. Without the protection of the ghost epoc's heavenly way, the epic ghost ship had already escaped without a trace. In addition, Heavenly Venerable Yama was also repelled by Yi Shiwen. This meant that the ghost epoc's final trump card to protect the ghost epoch had been exhausted. Before the martial epoc's army that rushed in, the ghost epic was almost powerless to fight back. It was as if the world had descended. The sky fell and the earth cracked, and all kinds of killings took place everywhere. How could the ghost epic resist? It was simply impossible. All of this was like a replay of the battle that happened in the martial epic 10,000 years ago. It was just one side slaughtering the other. After a month of killing, everything in the ghost epic collapsed. The entire epic was destroyed. The ghost epic's heavenly way was also devoured by the martial epic's heavenly way, becoming a part of the martial epic. In the martial epic, the ghost epic's laws were suddenly perfected. The experts who cultivated the ghost epic in the martial epic found it easier to cultivate. They made breakthroughs one after another. Many ghost epic experts appeared and flourished. With the fall of the ghost epic, the martial epic's expedition that shook the entire primal chaos finally came to an end. This battle established the martial epic's supreme position in this epic. Even though the martial epic was severely injured by the joint efforts of many ancient epics, the martial epic's power was still not something they could compare to. This dispelled many people's ambitions. It also made them understand that if they wanted to target the martial epic before this epic changed, they would have to pay with their lives if they wanted to do so. Only then would there be a slight chance of success. Because of this expedition, the martial epic annexed several ancient epics, making the martial epic's heavenly way more prosperous. These benefits were the most obvious. Many people felt that their cultivation had become easier. Many experts emerged, and geniuses gathered. After the expedition returned, Yishuan immediately announced that he would enter closed-door cultivation. However, this also made many people speculate. Did Yishuan really get severely injured in the battle with the Yama heavenly monarch? Chapter 38:16. This expedition finally came to an end. Similarly, this expedition was equally earth-shattering, startling the entire primal chaos. It allowed the entire primal chaos to witness the might and horror of the martial epic. Shao Chun had practically single-handedly defeated those ancient epics. This made many people who thought that the martial epic had already declined take a good look at whether the martial epic had truly declined or not. Everyone knew that regardless of whether the martial epic had declined or not, at least now, the martial epic would not decline. After destroying so many ancient epics, the martial epic had also devoured so many ancient epics' heavenly Daos. Even if it had been damaged long ago, it had most likely recovered in an instant. The truth was indeed as many people had predicted. After the martial epic, there were many experts and geniuses. It was like the birth of a brand new golden era. However, at the same time as such good news, there was another piece of news. As the Eastern Heavenly Venerate, Yishuan might have been severely injured in this expedition. Everyone also knew that the person who injured him was none other than the ruler of the Ghost Epic, Heavenly Monarch Yama, whom he had destroyed by force. Now, Yishuan seemed to have really reached such a horrifying level. Only a ruler expert could injure him. He could even sweep across half-step rulers. Originally, no one believed it. In other words, many people thought that even if Yishuan was injured, he should be able to recover quickly. However, after Yishuan returned, he directly went into closed-door cultivation. This closed-door cultivation lasted for 100,000 years. During this period, there was no news of him at all. For a time, all kinds of rumors were spreading. Many people guessed that Yishuan had really passed away while in closed-door cultivation. Even the most optimistic guess was that Yishuan was severely injured in the battle and had not recovered. No matter what kind of news it was, it did not seem to be good news. Because as the stabilizing force of the current martial epic, especially when Primal Chaos Overlord was forced into closed-door cultivation by Yishuan, if something happened to him, the consequences would be truly unimaginable. If not for Qin Zun's existence, making the entire martial epic look stronger, many people even suspected that the ancient epic's counterattack was imminent. The relationship between the martial epic and the many ancient epics had always been a love-hate relationship. There had never been a smooth transition. 100,000 years was neither long nor short. However, to the entire martial epic, it was like a blowout. After absorbing the essence of several ancient epics, the martial epic seemed to have returned to its peak, retaining all its essence before erupting. In the past 100,000 years, many experts and geniuses had emerged, a level that might have only appeared in the past 10 million years, or even hundreds of millions of years. Not only had they made up for the wounds left by the ancient era's siege, but they had also surpassed the past in one fell swoop. It was as if they had returned to the mighty era when fortune creation heavenly monarch was still on the throne. Many experts who had no hope of entering the sovereign emperor realm in their lifetime had suddenly emerged. Heavenly venerables had also continuously emerged. In just 100,000 years, the strength of the entire martial epic had increased by more than 50%. Many heavenly venerables had emerged in various domains. It was not only the Fortune God dynasty, but also the Chaos God dynasty. For the heavenly Tao, whether it was the Fortune God dynasty or the Chaos God dynasty, it was all the same. This was the principle of heaven and earth being heartless and treating all living things like straw dogs. Of course, the tribes and factions that had sent troops to sweep through the ancient epic had obtained more benefits. Originally, they were somewhat reluctant. However, due to Yishiwen's ferocious might, they did not dare to not go. Now that they had obtained great benefits, they were very grateful to Yishiwen. Not to mention the powerful Eastern heavenly venerables of the Fortune God dynasty, the other four great supremes, as well as the city lords of the 10 divine cities, had increased their strength to the limit in the past 100,000 years. They had reached the level of the middle heavenly venerables, far exceeding the ordinary peak heavenly venerables. The middle heavenly venerables had entered closed-door cultivation tens of thousands of years ago in order to break through to the half-step sovereign realm in one fell swoop. Such a grand occasion could be said to be almost as grand as when Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch was still on the throne, except for the absence of Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch. Of course, the Chaos God dynasty had also obtained many benefits. The strength of the many supremes conferred by the Chaos Overlord had also improved. However, compared to the Fortune God dynasty, they were still somewhat lacking. After all, that war was led by the Fortune God dynasty. The heavenly Tao was fair. How much effort they put in naturally corresponded to how much they reaped. Naturally, the human race had gained more. It was only 100,000 years. Not to mention the advancement of the original sovereign emperors. Just the newly ascended sovereign emperors alone had reached as many as 15 people. It was almost like a blowout. These sovereign emperors were the core and elite of the human race. It was originally very difficult for them to advance, but now, because of Yishiwen, heaven's merit had descended, and they had naturally broken through to the sovereign realm. In addition, the human race had 7 great heavenly venerables in one go. In the past 100,000 years, the human race's human emperor had gathered the strength of the human race and stepped into the heavenly venerable realm in one fell swoop, becoming the second heavenly venerable of the human race after Yishiwen. Then, the human race's heavenly venerables had collectively appeared like a volcanic eruption. After the human emperor, the sky-shaking thunder emperor, who had been closely following Yishiwen and fighting everywhere, had finally smoothly crossed the heavenly venerable realm barrier after being stuck for more than 100,000 years. This was also something that he had never dreamed of. In the beginning, he was only forced to follow Yishiwen. He did not expect that not only his cultivation would soar, but he even had the opportunity to become a heavenly venerable. This was something that he had dreamed of. Although he had almost failed to cross the retribution, the martial honorable seal had directly flown out of Mount Zhou at the critical moment and helped him, allowing him to cross the retribution and become a heavenly venerable. This time, many people firmly believed that Yishiwen was not the crux of the matter, but was still in close cultivation. After the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor had stepped into the heavenly venerable realm, Heavenly venerables had finally appeared among the people that Yi Shiwen had brought from the myriad heavens and realms. First was Emperor Mo and Yi Mo, followed by Demon Lord, Demon Master, Phoenix Ancestor, Death Lord, and others had stepped into the heavenly venerable realm, and their cultivation was extremely fast. In addition to them, Bien Xiaoya and Little Moon Tooth's cultivation had also advanced very fast, and they had actually reached the level of peak sovereign emperors. Obviously, this was not a normal cultivation speed. Even in this golden era, where everyone was like a dragon and everyone's cultivation was improving, such a cultivation speed was still terrifying. It was purely because they had received Yi Shiwen's luck. As people close to Yi Shiwen, they naturally received the blessing of the heavenly way, and their cultivation rose rapidly. If the human race was known as the world's #1 race in the past, it was purely because of Yi Shiwen and Qinzun's support. Now, no one was dissatisfied that the human race was known as the world's #1 race. Generally, if a race had one heavenly venerable, it was already a super race, let alone 8 heavenly venerables, including Yi Shiwen. With such a lineup, if EMO and the others were given some time, they would also step into the high-level heavenly venerable realm. Even with the power of a race, the human race would have the ability to hang up the entire eastern region and become the world's #1 race. Even in such a golden era, Yi Shiwen still did not appear. When a human emperor stepped into the heavenly venerable realm, Yi Shiwen did not appear. When Yi Mo stepped into the heavenly venerable realm, Yi Shiwen also did not appear. Even when his wife, the Phoenix Ancestor, and the Dead Lord also stepped into the heavenly venerable realm, there was still no news of him. It was as if he had really gone into closed-door cultivation, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. If the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor had not made a move during his tribulation, no one would have known whether he was dead or alive. Some people even speculated that it was the martial venerable seal that had made a move on its own, and not Yi Shiwen. Such speculation was not impossible. It was normal for an artifact spirit at the level of the martial venerable seal to have such an ability. The entire martial epoch, and even many ancient eras in the chaos space, were concerned about this matter. What was Yi Shiwen's situation? This was something that would determine the future of the epoch. While everyone was still discussing, the middle heavenly venerable had achieved the Tao. On that day, the sky was filled with purple clouds, and the entire martial epoch seemed to be immersed in this grand occasion. A terrifying aura descended upon the entire martial epoch. Everyone knew that the middle heavenly venerable had achieved the Tao. For the Fortune God dynasty, it could be said to be a joyous occasion. All along, the middle heavenly venerable's position had been very awkward. Although the middle heavenly venerable was at the top of all the supremes, and it could even be said that all the supremes had to follow his lead, everything had changed since the Eastern Heavenly Venerable's rise. Although Yi Shiwen had no intention of competing with him for the leadership of the martial epoch, the middle Heavenly Venerable was indeed at a disadvantage. In the past few years of the martial epoch, Yi Shiwen had been the instigator of all the major events. As a middle Heavenly Venerable, he was dispensable. But now everything had changed. Some people could look down on a peak Heavenly Venerable, but no one would look down on a half-step sovereign. That would be courting death. At this point, the middle Heavenly Venerable's position as the Fortune God dynasty's vice-emperor was truly in name. No one dared to question the middle Heavenly Venerable's position anymore. Although Yi Shiwen was very strong, terrifyingly strong, the middle Heavenly Venerable had already stepped into the half-step sovereign realm. At this point, the Fortune God dynasty situation had just stabilized, but another wave had already risen. Chapter 38:17. Originally, many people thought that when a middle Heavenly Venerable stepped into the half-step sovereign realm and officially secured his position as the deputy emperor of the Fortune God dynasty, no one would be able to shake him. Once again, there was a storm in the world. In just 1,000 years, a fierce man appeared in the world. He called himself Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord. The first time someone saw him, He was undergoing the Imperial Lord Tribulation. However, this Imperial Lord Tribulation was more than 10 times more terrifying than an ordinary Imperial Lord Tribulation. It alarmed many monarchs in the vicinity, and this was the first time he showed himself. At the very first moment, there was a sovereign who tried to harm him. However, what shocked everyone was that he heavily injured that sovereign with a single strike. He almost destroyed that sovereign's soul with a single strike. But this also exposed the fact that he had a precious treasure. This attracted the covetous eyes of many experts. He was just a newcomer who had just become a sovereign emperor. Even if his sovereign emperor tribulation was 10 times more terrifying than an ordinary person's, it was impossible for him to casually beat a sovereign emperor who was much stronger than him and had a higher cultivation realm. No one saw clearly what the precious treasure he used was. They only knew that he had a precious treasure, so all kinds of people tried to kill him. However, in the face of such a pursuit, he did not stay silent at all. On the contrary, he became stronger and stronger. As more and more emperors and emperors surrounded him, he was forced to use more and more of his trump cards. One by one, the emperors and emperors were seriously injured, killed, and even swallowed by him. Many people were shocked to find that as he swallowed more and more emperors and emperors, his strength became stronger and stronger. Almost every time he swallowed one, his strength skyrocketed. This terrifying efficiency shocked everyone, because the cultivation of an extreme-grade powerhouse was not only about devouring enough energy, it was also very particular about comprehension. However, Sir God devouring heaven had disregarded this rule. It seemed that wherever he devoured, he would improve. It was as if there were no bottlenecks or boundaries. In just over 300 years, this heaven-devouring divine lord had swallowed dozens of emperors and reached the peak emperor realm in one fell swoop. He even alarmed a heavenly venerable of the Chaos God dynasty, who directly attacked him. There was almost no suspense between a heavenly venerable and an emperor. Just as everyone thought that Sir God Tunshin was dead, no one expected that although Sir God Tunshin was severely injured, he still managed to escape. Everyone thought that Divine Lord Devouring Heaven would need to recuperate for at least 1,000 years before he could get better. However, Divine Lord Devouring Heaven surprised everyone again. He only recuperated for a few decades. When he reappeared, he was already undergoing the Heavenly Master Tribulation. After passing the Heavenly Master Tribulation, he immediately found the Heavenly Master, killed him, and devoured him. This caused Divine Lord Devouring Heaven's strength to soar once again. However, it also alarmed the Chaos Divine Dynasty and the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Among those killed by Divine Lord Devouring Heaven, there were people from the Chaos God Dynasty, as well as the Fortune God Dynasty's emperors and sovereigns. Hence, it could be said that the two divine dynasties were furious. Based on Divine Lord Devouring Heaven's situation, it was unknown how many people had to die to satisfy his desire to devour. The heavenly masters of the two divine dynasties were dispatched one after another, but they all failed in the end. For hundreds of years, there were no less than 100 attempts to kill Divine Lord Devouring Heaven. All of them were heavenly master experts, but they all failed without exception. A large number of them even died in defeat and became Divine Lord Devouring Heaven's food. This made Divine Lord Devouring Heaven stronger and stronger. In the end, the matter that shocked the world was that he defeated a supreme of the Chaos Divine Dynasty. That supreme was a peak heavenly master. He defeated him and then devoured him along with his bones. With that, even those who could find excuses could not continue to do so. After thousands of years of growth, Divine Lord Devouring Heaven had become the scourge of the entire world. At this moment, after attracting the attention of the entire martial epoch, everyone finally figured out the origins of this heaven-swallowing Divine Lord. Unexpectedly, he was also extraordinary and not an ordinary existence. Divine Lord Devouring Heaven's original body was actually a heaven-devouring worm. At first glance, it did not seem to be a big deal. After all, there are many names in the world like heaven-devouring heaven murdering, and so on. It was just a nice name. However, when everyone flipped through some ancient books, some records completely shocked them. They were completely frightened. This heaven-devouring worm was not just an ordinary thing that could devour or kill the heavens. It could even be said that it did not exist in this epic. It had existed for many epics. It could even be said that there had been heaven-devouring worms in many epics. No one knew how this race existed. They only knew that according to legend, every time an epic was born, a heaven-devouring worm would be sent into that epic. When the time was right, this heaven-devouring insect would hatch and begin its journey of devouring the heavens and the earth. It wasn't just an ancient era where a heaven-devouring insect had erupted. Unless it was discovered and killed in advance, the heaven-devouring insects of that era would start endless massacres. It was unknown how many experts it had to devour to nourish itself with the bones and blood of experts. The most horrifying thing was that there was an epic that did not stop the heaven-devouring worm. As a result, the entire epic was devoured by the heaven-devouring worm. That heaven-devouring worm had undoubtedly become the most horrifying existence in the entire primal chaos. The heaven-devouring worm that had devoured the entire epic had become a ruler. Even among ruler experts, it was extremely horrifying. No one could stop it. The heaven-devouring worm had wanted to devour countless ancient epics to complete its path of devouring the heavens and perfect its great Tao. It had finally alarmed the powerful rulers. Although the heaven-devouring worm was horrifying, it had still been killed in the end. However, before the heaven-devouring worm had been killed, it had caused 5 rulers to bleed in the primal chaos and perished in front of everyone. It was extremely ferocious. Hence, although there might only be one heaven-devouring worm in an epic, and some epics might not even have one, many busybodies still regarded the heaven-devouring worm as the most horrifying race in the primal chaos. Normally, the change of an epoch would destroy everything. However, some races and species could transcend epochs. For example, the heaven-devouring worm and the world tree. They were such existences. When they understood the existence of the heaven-devouring worm, they all felt goosebumps on their backs. Such a horrifying existence could even devour epics. It did not seem real. It was like a myth or a legend. No wonder, although there were records of the heaven-devouring worm, no one believed it. It was because the legend of the heaven-devouring worm devouring epics did not seem real. However, the existence of the heaven-devouring divine Lord made many people believe that the legend of the heaven-devouring worm might be real. Under such circumstances, the entire martial epic trembled because of the heaven-devouring divine Lord's existence. The horrifying speed of the heaven-devouring divine Lord's advancement and the legend of the heaven-devouring worm devouring an epic terrified many people. Many people guessed that this heaven-swallowing worm hatched because of the martial epic's resurgence. This was because not every epic had a heaven-devouring worm hatched. Finally, the highest echelon of the Fortune Divine Dynasty was startled. The person who made a move this time was none other than a Middle Heavenly Venerate. A Middle Heavenly Venerate, who had already become a half-step ruler, had the power to destroy the world. A Middle Heavenly Venerate fought against the heaven-devouring divine Lord 3 times. The first time, a Middle Heavenly Venerate completely suppressed the heaven-devouring divine Lord, severely injuring him and forcing him to flee. Devouring heaven immortal Lord, who had returned for the second time, seemed to have been reborn. He directly broke through the calamity of half-step ruler and became a half-step ruler. He was evenly matched with middle celestial venerables and even had a slight advantage. The third time, after 100 years, the heaven-devouring divine Lord personally fought his way to the Fortune Divine Capital. In the territory of a Middle Heavenly Venerate, he actually managed to severely injure a Middle Heavenly Venerate. If not for the Creation Universe map flying out at the crucial moment and scaring the heaven-devouring divine Lord away, many people suspected that he might have even killed a Middle Heavenly Venerate on the spot. After defeating a Middle Heavenly Venerate, the entire martial epic fell silent. No one dared to stop him. In fact, no one had the ability to stop him. Everyone felt hopeless. The most terrifying thing about Divine Lord Tunshin was not his strength, but the speed of his improvement. It had only been 1,000 years since he first appeared in front of everyone. Yet, he was already invincible, and there was hardly anyone in the world who could be his match. The Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord established the Heaven-Devouring Divine Sect at the border of the Chaos Divine Dynasty and the Fortune Divine Dynasty. He claimed that as long as they submitted to him, even if the martial epic fell one day, they could still obtain his protection. Furthermore, he did not hide his ambition to swallow the martial epic. He directly announced that he would destroy the world at some point in the future and swallow the martial epic's heavenly Tao. Although this was so blatant, it did not cause him to be rejected by more people. On the contrary, many people were frightened. In order to obtain protection, they all submitted to the Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord. They hoped that after the Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord swallowed the martial epic's heavenly Tao, he would spare their lives. At this point, no one doubted whether the Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord had the ability to do so. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Yi Shiwen and the Chaos Divine Dynasty's primal Chaos Overlord. Under such circumstances, it seemed like only these two supremes could stop the Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord. Yi Shiwen's status was unknown, and he was in closed-door cultivation for a long time. Naturally, there was no need to mention that the primal Chaos Overlord still had hope of stopping the Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord. After all, unlike a middle heavenly venerate, the primal Chaos Overlord was an experienced half-step ruler. His strength was even more tyrannical. Experts from various races were continuously sent to the human race's Mount Buzhou and the Chaos Divine Capital to ask the two Supremes to come out of closed-door cultivation to kill the Heaven-Devouring Divine Lord. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.